Good. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the August 15th meeting of the School Department's Building Subcommittee. We passed around a list for everyone to sign in. It looks like we do have everyone who has signed in. If you haven't, just let me know, and we do have a quorum, so we will move forward. The first item on the agenda is public comment. I'm sure there's been a public comment sign-up sheet, but I will do it a little more casual as we have the last few minutes. So if there's anyone from the public who would like to speak, please pop up. You can just form a line, and just give your name and address and provide your comments, and we'll do the best we can to respond.
Will King, 165 Sauga Avenue, North Kingstown. I was born here. I spent 6 years at Wickford Middle School, all on double sessions, 7th grade through 12th. We struggled to get through there, but we learned a lot. We did very well in life as a result of some of those struggles. Wickford Middle School was built in the depths of the Depression. Everybody struggled back then, but they built that beautiful, iconic building in our town. Alas, Wickford Middle School is now 90 and marked for demolition due to decades of neglect known as deferred maintenance. The result of poor leadership and decision-making, yet experts are on record explaining that the building is still capable of major rehabilitation and upgrades. Or, 8 years ago, in 2016, I was on the North Kingstown Ad Hoc Committee to find a solution for a new town government center, a new town consolidated government center, which needed 60,000 square feet, as I remember it. We did a lot of surveys, and the result was that the poor leadership and, well, never mind. So experts are on record explaining that the building is still capable. Oh, wait, I jumped over something. Excuse me. Oh, that Wickford Middle School was too small to accommodate today's many laboratories and sports facilities at 70,000 square feet. But the building was an ideal candidate for a consolidated government center, and North Kingstown should build a consolidated middle school elsewhere on a vacant site. In those 8 years, no action on this alternative and reasonable solution. But take it to the bank. The subject of a new consolidated government center is not far off. It's time to start good decision making, and now's the time. Wickford Middle School might be old, but it's solid, and it can withstand 2 or more stories of classrooms added on to the top, plus new additions on the south end. Extend the municipal sewer system a few hundred yards south, serving Wickford Middle School. Bite the bullet and consider some struggles like our forefathers and do the right thing. I will be voting no on any bond issue that includes demolishing Wickford Middle School. Thank you.
Ricky Thompson, 194 Plain Road. Good afternoon. Before I get into my comments, I'd just like to say that I agree with Mr. King and his comments. My comments are in reference to the Wickford Middle School investigation last spring, the fields. If I may ask, based on the PAR engineer's comments coupled with the sample test pits, will this committee, or does this committee, will they share the odds that the Wickford Middle School fields are clean such that no remediation will be required? That's my first question. If I recall correctly, the bond includes contingency dollars. My question pertaining to that is, does that include remediation, those contingency dollars? And if so, what is that dollar figure? And finally, if the contingency money is there for remediation, and it goes over that, or if the contingency money is not for remediation, who will be responsible for the cost of remediation? That's all I have.
So as co-chair, I can say that, I'm sure that we'll be able to answer your question as to the odds or the thoughts on whether remediation is necessary during one of the presentations that follows. I'll make sure that we address that. As far as the contingency, again, my experience in construction is that the contingency usually isn't challenge specific. It's indeed a contingency. And so my gut, and I'll turn it over to those who put together the estimate, my gut is that the contingency probably doesn't have a line item for remediation, but I could be wrong. So again, I'll make sure that the individual who put together the cost estimate mentioned that before the agenda's over. And then finally, what would happen if we ran over? That I can't answer. If we ran over contingency, that's part of the entire budget. So the bond is a not to exceed number. So under any condition, we cannot exceed that number. So if the contingency line item is over and there's another line item that's under by the same or a better amount, you just move forward. It's like a budget. And so if we have the fire department's over but police department's under, we move forward. We have a balanced budget. And then we make sure there's not a structural problem, and we handle that next year. A project like this, we cannot exceed the total number. Who's responsible? Either, as with any bond, either cuts have to be made or outside resources have to be found, but you cannot exceed the not to exceed bond number. Hope that answers your question.
It does, and let me just word it this way. Would that also include additional bonding if required?
So any additional bonding would have to be approved by the voters.
Right. So that is a possibility. I'm not
So,
saying.
I'm giving my personal opinion, well,
Sure.
One individual's professional opinion. We have a building committee who then gives advice to the school committee, who then has to have a project approved by the town council. So one person's opinion, and my position as town manager, I can tell you that once the shovel is in the ground, my experience is that there is no way timing would allow for the town to put another bond question on for that particular project, unless of course it's an expansion. So we have a project that has to be built, the shovel's in the ground, there's no way a time frame would allow for a bond 24 months later to allow for an additional bond for that particular project. I can't see how that would possibly work. That's my opinion, on a cash flow basis, on an unknown basis. So how do you stop construction pending a bond? If the bond fails, what do you do then? You're just dragging out the project, which escalates the cost. So my gut is no additional bond for any unknown costs once the project begins is not an option. That's my opinion.
Oh, and I appreciate that, I really do, and I appreciate the response. I just think, because I'm very familiar with what's going on in Newport, and I'm sure most, if not all, on this committee is also. And essentially, Newport's looking at the potential of another bond to cover some of the remediation.
So I may not know what's going on in Newport as much as you do, but I do know what happened in Johnston, and that conversation takes place before the shovel goes in the ground.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Newport's already had the shovel in the ground.
They did,
They
yes.
did.
And
That's
now they've got
interesting.
problems, and then now they need the money, they don't have the money,
That's
so.
very interesting.
yeah.
So again, that's a very, as, in my business experience, I'm not sure how they pull that off with cost escalations, with whatnot, unless it's a separate project, but I'm just giving my professional opinion as a building committee, school committee, and a council. But that's my
I'd say we'd have to reevaluate, if something's going over, we gotta reevaluate the projects we have and what we're moving forward on.
yeah, that's exactly the point.
That's
Yeah,
the process we
I always
have.
looked at it like, let me just use this, you're halfway done, you find out, geez, we're not gonna have enough money, what are you gonna do? And, as a taxpayer, I'm not gonna say, well, you gotta stop, this isn't gonna work, something has to happen, so. And again, I'm not familiar with all the ins and outs, but like with budgets and things, and building also, I'm somewhat familiar. So I guess I will end by, just for clarification in my mind, right now, we don't know if this land is clean or not. Is that true?
Well, no, the reports that came, when we did the reports with the soil, there was nothing at that time that would lead us to think that there would be a problem.
Right, and I mean, as we move on into the next phases, there are, we did a ESA phase 1, then there's an ESA phase 2 that will happen, and that's all part of this, rigorous process that is gone through to vet the conditions
But if you could elaborate, only because I wanna get my understanding, so that way Ricky
Yeah.
maybe I'm more comfortable. So my question to you is, you've done a lot of projects, and I remember that we did the phase one, then we brought the public works in to do the phase two. We did historical research on the land to find out if anything was there. I mean, it seems like we've probably done more on this project regarding the status of the soil and land than most projects you've worked on. Is that
There's
inaccurate?
quite a bit of research that's been done. We can, have PAR come to the environmentalists come to our next meeting and outline everything. It is certainly not the last, it is just for, clarification, they've done a phase one ESA, not the phase two.
Thank you.
The phase two will be next.
Okay.
What
I thought
was-
the test pits were phase two.
Yeah, what was the comment that was made yesterday? And I remember it was made specifically regarding the foundation, and the
Yeah.
statement was that the site was good for that type of foundation.
One thing that has, and we have our structural engineer here tonight, which is Sophia RN from RSC. She takes the geotechnical report, which did look at the capacity for the soils and bearing, and the good news was that we can have standard foundations and footings. Do you want to comment a little bit more on that?
Yes, so PAR, who's a geotechnical, and I believe they do the environmental testing as
Mhm.
well. So I really concentrate on more of the technical and how much can the soil hold. So I can answer that question, and yes, we have soils that are good enough to have shallow foundations, which is really ideal.
Which is
For a
good
hospital.
news
Yeah.
versus, having anything much more sophisticated.
No,
Not-
you don't need piles, you don't need ground improvements, that's just added cost, so.
And that's
that
what,
respect.
that's what, in general, the contingency would be for if you needed more advanced types of foundations.
Contingency is for that, it's for the spectrum of the unknown.
And so it appears that as far as this, the contingency question is pretty much basic. The soil question, with the news that I'm getting is that unless a extremely unexpected event occurs, which could happen on any project, on any parcel, that it seems like this area is very suitable for what we're going forward with. So if there's concerns about the project, I think hanging a hat on the soil would not be appropriate. I think there's could be other concerns, and that's fair, but this particular concern, if something does happen, it's not because of anything that we haven't done. It could have happened on any project in any city or town. We've done all we could on this project.
And that was part of the reason for the test pits, correct? Because normally, as part of the stage two, you wouldn't necessarily have those test pits done. That was something we did above and beyond, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, because I know that there was some sampling that we did at Wickford Middle School that wouldn't normally be done until after stage two. Is that accurate, Inger and Tina?
Well, it depends, project dependent. If there are questions on the site, of course, there are sampling that's done. But performing the ESA phase two prior to approvals at this stage of the project, because it is a cost that the town incurs, is not customary. So we typically don't see stage two ESA at this preliminary phase.
So
So
we
we
did
usually
phase
do
one.
it during schematic design once the project is moving forward, which is the next phase.
Okay, I guess before you start, we'll have really good assurance, as close to 100% as possible. How I look at it is if I was building my house on property and there was some question, before I broke ground, I would probably really wanna make sure.
So I guess,
yeah.
I guess the response would be, and again, I'm just
Part
gonna
of
give
the
my opinion, I
process.
guess my response would be that we agree, and as if you were building a house on a certain parcel of land, at this point, we don't have any questions. Doesn't mean something can't come up, just like when you're building your house, you had no question, but all of a sudden you found something.
Right.
We have no question, but it could be unexpected, just like the land you're buying to build your house.
Okay, so there'll be additional discussions on this as we move forward then.
Before the building construction even starts, there's 3 more phases, right? So there's schematic design phase, design development, and construction document phase. And each phase has an estimate that goes with it. So we have to produce 3 more estimates where those contingencies get readjusted and as design moves forward. So right now there's more contingency because there is, less detail. As details becomes more fine-tuned, contingencies move forward, get reduced because we now know more information. But the bottom line doesn't change, so it's just basically reallocation of funds. And then anything that's site-related, more studies anything to make sure that we can rule out as many surprises as possible, or anything that we have not seen yet, is done during this next schematic design phase.
Okay, no, that sounds good. I'll just share with you, I was at an event, probably about a month ago, and I was speaking to this gentleman. I didn't even know him, but he lives in town, and he was an elderly gentleman, and he had no idea about this, the building new schools and what have you, and he asked me where they were looking at doing this, and I told him, and he rolled his eyes, he says, good luck with that, and I go, what do you mean? And I don't have to tell you everything that was
We've
said.
heard the same thing, we've done
I
so
think
much
there's
research.
a lot of,
Yeah.
everyone keeps saying there was a dump there's cars, but
Yeah.
with what we're doing with digging the test pits and looking at the soil, that's not bringing, we're not leading down that road, we're not finding that.
Yeah,
Looking at
historical-
historical, I mean,
The
those are
historical
And also
historical.
documents.
looking
You
at,
looked at
looking at
historical
the
documents.
maps as
Right.
well of the land and how the land was used in the past, and, looking at maps as well. So, we are hearing that, but through all of the reviews, we have not found that.
Okay.
And we dug all test pits also, not a lot, but we dug some test pits, could not find anything, so.
Okay, no, I do remember that, so I'll be paying attention. Thank you.
Well,
Hello. I have a lot of questions that I always struggle with public comment being in the beginning, because I also like to hear the presentation and then formulate my questions after the facts are presented. I wasn't going to go. I was going to wait for some other people to speak, because I'm sure I would have some stuff to add to what they have to say. And if I need to, I would hope to maybe be given some extra time if possible. But if not, I would like to ask my questions, because they kind of piggyback off of what Ricky just said. I get all of this. I think you all, people who know me, understand that I pretty much know all this stuff that's going on. So my questions aren't, I'm new to this at all. My questions, I try to dig deeper, and I'm just really stuck on if the project goes over, if the new middle school goes over the new construction. I am very much stuck with the need to invest in our existing facilities, and the, we have a not to exceed, but the not to exceed, what is that number?
137?
Right. So that is such an open-ended bond question that was put forth, and trust me, I've heard it from all of you that that's how bonds are written. I tend to disagree on, just having to do things, because that's always how it's been done. But I don't understand how, if we go over, since it's not written, there's no stipulation that we could or have to stop at approximately $78 million for the new construction. What happens if we go over up to $137.2 million? You may think that's silly, but if we don't start for another couple years, that's a possibility. I really feel like I haven't gotten full answers on what happens then, because I don't know that anybody really can answer that question at this point, which I think is why people are very concerned with this bond and the way it's written and the way it's worded. I look at I'm a sub in the district, so I've been in every single building in this district. I've worked in them for hours at a time. I don't just walk in and pick my kids up and leave. I see the ins and the outs, and I see the necessity and the needs for things, and I see things that aren't even on the list that do need to be done. And I want to invest in our schools. I really do. I just have trouble with investing in a new building, constructing a new building, to potentially the detriment of what exists as it is right now. And because of the way this bond is written, that's a possibility. I still don't know about, I don't know if you've all received my email that I sent this morning. I was asked for it to get forwarded around. I understand it just came this morning, and maybe you haven't had a chance to look at it. If you haven't, please look over it. There are two different rating systems of our facilities. There's the FCI number, and then there's some random number that was submitted that I had asked about back in April. I still haven't gotten an answer yet. And I'm really concerned, because one of the FCI number for Forest Park comes in it's our worst performing building at 77.41%, and that was done by Jacobs back in 2016. We haven't had an audit since then. Supposedly there's another one coming up. I can't imagine the school has gotten better over the last, 8 years. And then it was ranked in the other submission for stage 1 application as a level 2, and the worst performing building was then Wickford Middle. Right there, to me, that information that's conflicting, was hoping for an answer I have not received. Maybe I'm not understanding something, and that's fine. I just would like an answer to that. And when I don't get answers, and when we don't get answers, I think that's where we struggle. I know you're still working, or maybe you're going to talk about it tonight, on the square footage requirements, the reimbursements from RIDE. I know that was something. And I still don't know if it's going to be an emergency shelter. I know it was kind of going to be like a half emergency shelter, but if so, will we have to adjust the generator, the design, the mechanicals? And these are all things, quotes I'm taking from the last meeting. But getting back to the existing facilities, is there something in place that you can tell the public before the vote? Because I understand we still have a couple years if the money gets passed, but we're voting to give our money to you now in November. Can you tell us what the plan is going to be if we do go over? Honestly, I'd love to see, if we go over by 10 million, we're going to take away this project from the CIP list, capital improvement project list. If we go over 20 million, we need to not, we can't fix this. If we go over 30 million, we can't fix this. That would be great, just to give people an idea of then what's going to have to be tabled. Everybody should go back and look at what happened in 2018 with the $13.5 million the school district got. That money was not fully spent, and the stuff that it was spent on was not necessarily the priority ones. Some of the stuff was priority 5s, and it was spent on that. Don't take my word for it. Just go back and look. And if I'm wrong, please share that with me. But that was only with $13.5 million. You're now asking for 10 times more. And I understand the times have changed, and it's a few years later, but it's a lot more money. And I would just like to know, and I think the public would like to be comfortable knowing what's going to get cut if we go over. And finally, and I think someone else in the audience might end up speaking to this, but I'm just going to say this. I am also concerned, and I have been speaking to people around town, and this has come up a lot. And this is not my wheelhouse, but it's come up, so I'd like to bring it up. Adam mentioned at the last meeting, Mr. White mentioned at the last meeting, quote, have you looked at septic versus sewers? A gentleman from PAR said, nope, we can talk offline. We have to match the size of the existing septic if that's the way we go. And that's during stage 3 discussions. Stage 3 is way after the bond is or is not passed. So I would like to know if we've discussed this, because to me, septic versus sewers, and I don't think we can do sewers, but that's probably a big issue. Much more important maybe than the design at this stage. But again, I just would like to know these answers. And if anybody would like to respond to my email that you sent in any way, shape, or form, I'd be happy to speak with anyone. I'd be happy to see your responses. And just any explanations. And I'm sorry if I hijack somebody's conversation. Thank you.
So, Megan, I just respond to some of that. As far as your email, I was at a safety conference today, so if that was sent to me to share.
It was last minute, sorry.
I haven't even seen it yet, so, but I will make sure that I share that with the others if that was what.
Today I didn't send it to you. I sent it to you a little while ago. Maybe it just got lost.
You said you sent an email today.
I sent an email, a follow-up from something I sent you, but I sent it to a few people and just asked that it get distributed because I don't know every single building subcommittee member's email address. So I sent it to people who hopefully would have it. And that's okay if it didn't get sent out today. I was just kind of hoping to get you guys before the meeting.
Nope.
But following up, that would be awesome if I could
As far
get
as
some.
we responded to others.
Yeah.
So as far as we go through this process and you're saying, what if the middle school goes over and how are you going to deal with that? I mean, that is something we have to evaluate as we go through the process. As a parent in town, just like you, going through the schools, you see a lot. I see a lot that needs to happen. We have an entire list here of what needs to be done in these schools. And this bond is not just to build a new middle school, but also to renovate what is needed across the district, because there is a great need. And as the superintendent and as a parent of 4 children here, I see it as well. There's work that we need to do, and we need to make sure that we're doing that work. If something goes over, that's constantly something we have to reevaluate, right? I can say in the meetings, how many times do I bring up the cost?
Mm-hmm.
A lot. And I say we have to stay on this. We can't go over this. We have to be careful of the square footage. I am constantly bringing that up every time we are meeting and looking at designs and looking at numbers. So I can tell you that is something I am paying very close attention to, because we need to, because we have to make sure that the money that we have here, of how we're dividing it out, we are not then all of a sudden going to be building a middle school that's $100 million versus the target we have right now. So that is something paying very close attention to. As far as what would come off if we go over, that is something we have to look at, and I think it would be a challenge to kind of say right now, this is what we would take off, because I think during the time and going through this process within the 5 years of building, that could change, because also the buildings, I mean, if we're saying that, okay, we're going to do, the roof, and we're going to be doing some heating, and we're going to be doing security vestibules, right? All these things that we have listed here, and something needs to change. There might be something on there that we say today, okay, we take that off, but in 3 years, that has deteriorated even more. We can't take that off. We need to do that. It has to be something else. So there needs to be a little bit of understanding that what you might say today you're going to take off because you're going to knock off, $100,000 or $200,000 or $1 million or whatever that number is, might not be what it really is 3 years from now, because that situation might be in greater need of repair.
I just want to say thank you, Dr. Duva, Mr. Mezzanotte. I have full confidence in your plan, and I truly believe that you have the best interests of the district at heart. And I know that you are working very hard to make sure that this job gets done properly. And I hope that should the bond pass in the fall, that all of us can work together as a community to ensure that it gets done the right way. But I know you guys are working really hard.
Megan, if I may, just a couple of quick things. You mentioned the emergency shelter, so we've been talking.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. We've been talking about that, and we brought the chiefs in. Right now, Wickford Middle School is an emergency shelter, believe it or not. But our true emergency shelter is in South Kingstown. So as a result of our conversations, we feel that having Wickford Middle School as an emergency shelter will have a minimal impact, because there's only a small portion of the school that we have to keep operating during a blackout or whatnot. So that won't have a major impact. It still will continue to be an emergency shelter, but our true shelter is in South Kingstown. Just to elaborate on what the superintendent just said, and as you know, this is an advisory committee, so you all have a lot of say in any changes in the documents, because it has to go to the school committee and the council. But know that anything dramatically over the amount that we put aside will not get approved by RIDE. So not only do we have, because of reimbursement, so not only do we have the fact that you have a group of individuals who are committed to making sure that a significant amount of money is being spent on our elementary schools, which I, like the superintendent, have grandchildren in our school system, and not one will ever go to Wickford Middle School. They'll all go to Davisville. So I agree that the other schools have to get this attention. And then finally, and I say this respectfully because I really like the information you give, it's always well thought out, the questions are good, but this is more of a question and an honest answer, is that we're talking about septic versus sewer constantly. Do you really think that that would impact a vote as to whether it's going to be hooked up to sewer or not? And I mean that respectfully, because we need to know that. We're talking about it, but to me that's almost like, what kind of light bulbs do you want to put in? It's septic or sewer. We got to figure out what the most cost efficient, and whether even it can be sewer or septic. Do you really think that anyone's going to walk in and say, I was going to vote for this, but because it's septic, I'm not?
Well, I suppose the answer to that, for me, because that is not something that I focus heavily upon, but I do have to say, as I mentioned, people are talking about it. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
And to be honest with you, I mean, Adam brought it up at the last meeting.
Oh, but no, internally I agree. I'm just shocked that this is good for us. I'm
Right.
shocked that the voters who are going to vote are saying, are interested in that. That's all. I'm not sure how that would sway a vote, but we need to know that, so that's
Well,
helpful. So
in the very least, there is question about, are sewers even possible? And again, especially because some of the people I'm speaking to live in that area. So I think it probably more concerns them. But I just think, yeah, it is something that people are talking about. Now, I'm not saying that's going to sway their vote, but I am saying possibly that they would like to, have answers on it. And again, remember, the more you give, the more information you give, the better it's going to be. Sure. You just reminded me of something, Mr. Mollis, and it's going to kill me now because I can't remember what it was. I had a question. Anyway, if I remember, can I jump back up? It'll be short.
Yeah.
But okay, thank you.
You want to
If I
mention
may add
Yeah.
something for RIDE approvals and how the budget
Oh,
is set.
yes.
Do you want to ask, can I say later? Or?
Yes, if you don't mind. I'm sorry. RIDE, that is the first time I'm hearing that if we go over budget on the new construction, a certain amount, that RIDE will not approve the project. Does
Yeah,
that?
no, so I'll leave that, they won't approve reimbursement, but I think you're right into that. So
I was actually going to talk
Okay.
about that. So first of all, once we submit on the stage 2, there is a breakdown for each project, right? That is why even the CIP breakdowns is important to include. So once that total is submitted and each project budget is submitted, if we go over, especially on the small ones, there is there is ability to move things around. On a large one, as Wickford Middle School, if at schematic design we bring in an estimate that's 97 million or 137 million just for Wickford Middle School, they will not approve that submission. So we will have to try harder and we will have to find out why this happened. That is the reason why so early in the process we have a full, there is a good cost associated with it upfront. There is a full estimate that is done with obvious contingencies because there are no drawings that were developed, right? But there are some assumptions and cost per square foot and unit pricing and historical data that is done by a professional estimator. In this case, it was a PM&C. And we have an estimate with those contingencies, and those contingencies are based on projects that have happened within the last 5 to 10 years and inclusive of escalation. We can't control the future. The escalation might become 25% tomorrow. This is something we do not foresee. But we do foresee a reasonable escalation of 6%, and we escalate to midpoint of construction. We do put 10%, 15% of design contingencies for anything that may be unknown, unaccounted for, not detailed. And that budget is considered to be flexible and sort of comfortable enough to not go over, because when you submit stage 2 and it gets approved, the team basically says that the project was vetted enough for this cost to be what it is going to be. It could be a little more, a little less, but not like you say all of a sudden it becomes 130 million and it gets approved. Now if it goes over 137 million in total, RIDE will not participate, because you have to, first of all, you cannot submit on the same project twice. So once you submit for Wickford Middle School for the amount of money, unless something drastic like similar to COVID say happens, RIDE will not be, we cannot submit stage 2 again and get more money for reimbursement for the overage. That doesn't work. You can only submit for new scope. If we wanted to add to Wickford Middle School, say maybe it's another, I don't know, early education center or something that was not on the initial submission, sure, you can submit on that scope. So RIDE watches budgets very closely, they review them closely. In stage 2, when we submit, their estimators, their reviewers also review the estimate. They comment on the estimate. If there's any questions, comments, concerns, we address those. So there are layers in place to make sure that all the work, or at least over 95 to 98% of the work does happen, assuming there are no major events.
Inga, quick clarification. So when we submit our stage 2 in September, we get kind of a more detailed cost estimate. So we'll be able to know that, I think you said there's 10 to 15% contingency. So we're going to know in that $77 million budget, roughly $7 to $11 million of that is contingency money should the price of steel go up, or concrete, or some function within that time. So the contingency is not a small amount, it's a sizable.
Yes.
I mean,
I looked at that. It's a sizable amount. The team here works with the estimator all the time while they're developing those schematic or pre-schematic sort of. So there's two. I can say schematic design. We submit schematic design twice. One in stage 2, then we again redefine it a little bit more and submit the documents in stage 3. So you hear schematic design 2 times in both stages. But while this team designs the schematic design, they constantly re-estimate and work with the estimator, so another estimate will be included with stage 2. And that estimate, as far as I understand right now, is still within the same value that was set in the beginning. Now, the CIP projects, the estimates are moving slightly, so there is also an estimator And also, each and every project has to get estimated with backup and every detail that goes into it and unit pricing.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Can I add something? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
we're going
go
on.
ahead.
Just because I think I think your concern was that money would get moved around.
Right, yeah.
And there's limits on that. We're also working with Bristol Warren, very similar bond that passed, new high school and CIP projects in 4 or 5 schools. There's commitments with RIDE to do those projects, so, and in that case, the high school in stage 3 was a little bit over. We don't take from the other projects to fill in for the new school. Each one has a commitment to do that work, so it doesn't, there's limits on how much you can move the money around.
No, you can't just move money, you have to get, you have to go to RIDE, you have to get an approval from them, you have to really explain why you're doing what you're doing, and you can't say because we decided not to do this roof, or, we're just gonna leave it, and throw all this money into the other project. So this doesn't work like that. So that it's a pretty, I've gone through there are cases when it happens, and I've gone through the process. It's not easy, and RIDE does not take it serious. I mean, I'm sorry, it's the other way around. They take it seriously.
So, just thank you for that explanation. And just a quick big picture thing, because I'm thinking as a teacher in my head, this is what happens when you're a teacher and you know this stuff and you're trying to teach someone this. And Mr. Mollison, Dr. Juva, maybe this is just something going forward, to your point about septic versus sewer and what you just explained. These are things I did not know. And you said you spoke about it internally, and Inga, sorry, I don't know what your last name is, but I apologize for calling you by your first name.
You can say Inga, that's fine.
Ms. Inga, I appreciate that you know all this, but it's just nice to hear it because somebody who's following along, it's nice to have that explained to me. And maybe just going forward, I know you don't want to have to get into the weeds on everything, but to me that's a pretty big point, how RIDE reimburses and that there is some sort of stopgap so that we don't go over excessively. So I think that maybe going forward, even if you guys are talking about things internally, maybe just have like a little focus group with your family at home and say, hey, does this make sense to you? Because if it doesn't make sense to you, it doesn't make sense to the public. And maybe we should, again, more information is better if possible without having to, waste too much of your time. So just a suggestion, but thank you for your time.
Any other public comment? Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm sorry, did you raise your hand?
Yes.
If you could come up to the mic.
My only comment is this site really needs to have a sewer attached to it. There is groundwater problems there. There is ledge there. You have a neighborhood there. You have a service station with gas tanks underground. If you don't put sewers there and the groundwater changes, you're going to affect the entire neighborhood. And how do you approach people when they're getting water from that site once you stop and dig and change the groundwater? That's my only comment.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Next item on the agenda is to approve the previous meeting minutes of July 15th, and hopefully you all had a chance to take a look at those. There's a motion in order to approve. Second, is there a second? Second. For the record, I'm not just any some of this. I'll second. All in favor? Excellent. And I'll turn the next few items over to our superintendent. I know we may move them around a little bit, but I'll turn them over to the superintendent.
Thank you. So the next item is to give an update on where we stand with our stage 2 application and the work that we're doing.
Yes.
So,
Do you want me to say a quick update?
is it,
Oh, it's for our presentation now.
And the presentation, I think,
yeah,
is done.
we'll move on to but even just an
next.
update,
Right.
you know, a quick update, and then we can get into the
Okay.
presentation.
Well, we're still on target for the, it's gonna be the 16th of September. We're working hard, that we have we're at the last, so to speak, weeks, when we had to compile all the documents, and send them to RIDE. there is gonna be a presentation by, the Wickford Middle Design Team, and, the CIP projects will be discussed a little bit later. There's sort of nothing else that I have to say, other than that, unless
No,
there's
just
questions from the committee relative to.
we're moving forward with everything.
Yep.
The work that we have to do regarding the designs and, the submitting of the packet, we are on track with what we need to submit. There are no concerns at this point of not meeting that deadline. So we're
Yeah, I might
in
just
good
add
shape
that,
at this point with all the work that has to be done, so.
excuse me, yeah, I mean, we can talk about it when we get to our review, but, we're here, this is another snapshot of our progress. We were just here about, two or plus weeks ago. This one in particular, this snapshot of where we are is a milestone for us because, and actually it's, will address a lot of what's been discussed. We are submitting, all our materials to the estimator tomorrow, and they're going to be, developing this next level of estimate over the next 2 weeks. These documents are also gonna be put up onto the Google Drive, and everyone can then review them there as well. So we'll talk about, some of our recent activities, but today's presentation is in fact mostly focused on the site because at our last meeting, we talked a lot about the building. You'll see some of the details. We have our structural engineer to talk about the approach that we have for our structure. We will talk a little bit about our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. But the focus today, in the last 2 weeks, our focus has been on the site, and we'll hear more from, we have Matt Alford with us today from PAR to talk about that development.
I know a lot of the work that you guys are doing, and I know that it's not done in a vacuum. You have regular meetings with RIDE. How often does RIDE give input? Because I know the goal of this is once we get to stage 2, there's no surprises. It's pretty much not maybe a total done deal, but it's pretty good and guaranteed at that point. How often do you talk to RIDE on a regular basis?
We've just we had 2 official meetings with them, and the last meeting was very positive. They were very pleased that we've sort of acknowledged some of the concerns and things that they had to say relative to Wickford Middle School, some CIP questions we answered. I'm in constant communication with certain things, certain questions, certain memos we have to submit. In general, the process is very fluent. Well, it's a little bit more fluent. So we'll submit on the 16th, then they'll take some time, and I don't know how much time. It depends on how many submissions. So there is no real answer to that. They will take our package and they will give it to a reviewer. So that's a third-party reviewer. That reviewer will provide comments back. Those comments will range from comments that we'll just have to basically say, please see section X, and the information is there, you just missed it or didn't see it, or maybe that it wasn't clear enough, or maybe we have to supply. And they give us usually, depending on when those comments come out, a couple of weeks to respond. It could be 1, 2, or 3 weeks, it depends. Once we follow up and submit on all the follow-up documents, typically it's a memo and with supporting documentation. They'll basically say, okay, we're good, you're in good standing, it's pre-approved, and then you just wait for the meeting with the primary and secondary council, which happens in December.
And we have internally, we're having our meetings with the project team with
Yeah.
Brookins and
Weekly.
with Inga
Right.
and with Rouse, at least weekly, sometimes twice a week
Yeah.
or more with phone calls, but there are regular meetings throughout the week that we're meeting on.
And that reviewer from RIDE, is that a person that works for RIDE? Is that an independent reviewer?
It's independent.
Okay.
So RIDE
It's
has a
not like-
pool of companies. They're typically architecture firms that they hire, engineering firms. Typically they're architecture firms that will review those. So
But
we don't know.
our meetings have been with Dr. De Silva.
Our meetings are with RIDE. We don't
Yeah.
know who the reviewer will be. We may see the name pop up when we submit, or we may not even see the name. It will come from RIDE. And the reviewer ultimately recommends the comments and questions. The submission gets reviewed at the end by RIDE. personnel themselves. So the questions, I can call them, you know, we have a meeting with them, we can say, okay, well, this is, out of the ordinary, you know, we didn't anticipate it, why do we need to provide it? So they'll clarify, they may say, you know what, you don't need it, maybe you need a memo substantiating that, or maybe it's not applicable, so it's a little bit of a back and forth. So I'm just saying, like, when the comments do come in, it may look like there is a lot of comments, I've done it many times, but a lot of them, like 99% of those comments are, they're attainable to answer, so it's a team effort, so to speak. But RIDE ultimately approves, not a secondary reviewer.
No, well, I was just gonna say, I think it's great that it's an independent reviewer, that's just another check and balance on this whole project. It's another set of eyes that is looking at this.
Right.
So I think that's a good thing.
And but they may not always know the history, so sometimes you have to say, well, the reason why we did it this way is because this happened. So we'll just put it in a narrative, because they may not know why.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'd like to move the next agenda item, the capital improvement projects, so that way we can do the WMS presentation first. Is that okay with everyone? Just move that item? Okay. All right, so we'll review.
So we just kind of gave that overview. Here we are today, again, as I mentioned, it's a snapshot in time. This process, we are continually diving deeper, vetting all these different aspects of the project and developing the design. Inga's gonna talk a little bit about the timeline and the bond overview, which we talked about last time, just to bring everybody back to the same page. And then our design update includes the site. As I mentioned, we've got Matt Alford, who's our site civil designer, and he is also going to present the designs of our landscape architect in his discussion. For the building, again, we presented it last time. We continue to develop it. We have Sophia RN from RSE. She's going to describe the structural system and the approach. Again, as Kenny has highlighted, we're always thinking about efficiency and economy and practicality. So that has been the design approach, and it starts to see its way into everything that we do. And you'll see, Sophia will talk a little bit about that as it relates to the structure. We'll talk a little bit about our mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems. Again, what's great about this project is the commitment to net zero energy. So the project includes geothermal wells for the mechanical, and we have PVs on the roof, which over the life of the building, that also, your operating costs are significantly impacted by that. We'll go to the next slide. Oops, sorry. So Inga, do you wanna review the schedule?
Well, so, the next meeting, so this presentation will be presented at the August 20th school committee meeting. Also, there'll be some items relative to New England CHIPS presented at the policy committee, as well, so we're working with the superintendent on that. Our goal is to possibly have one more school building committee in September, early in September, just before school committee and the town council. So those will be more finalized drafts at that point. So those will need to be possibly voted and approved. So, and then we're targeting to submit electronically by email on September 16th.
Inga,
Any questions?
Due to some unforeseen scheduling conflicts, the council meeting has been changed to September 23rd. So what does that do to this, and what do we need to do?
I'm going to call Right tomorrow.
Okay, let me know.
And I think what we can do, and what I've done before, is we can just put a memo from possibly someone from the committee, from the town, just saying that the school, due to unforeseen conditions, just what you said, the meeting has been moved, it's on the agenda, and once it's approved, we will follow up with the
Let me know if
meeting
any
minutes, and let me know any issues, typically within a month.
Good. Thank you.
I don't guarantee, but
Okay, thank you.
it may be differently, but
Yep.
we'll try and figure it out.
Okay. And then just, this is, we share this every time.
Right, so the bond has not changed. I could touch base quickly on the reimbursement, as now it's very simple. The base rate, I believe, is at 35% still. And I do know that the district will qualify, I think, for another 5% for health and safety. I think it's the only bonus that remain without expiration date. So there is also the up to 4% for being above and beyond New England CHIPS for water efficiency and energy efficiency. That bonus still exists, but you can only apply one, either health and safety of 5% or the water efficiency and energy efficiency bonus. So you cannot have both. This is where the legislature is at the moment. So.
So I'm gonna interrupt again, just one quick question. So in your opinion, when we run the fiscal impact, should I be running it at 35% reimbursement or 40?
40.
And are we still allowed to bundle? Like if we took our CIP projects and submitted along with the middle school,
Yep.
they would all qualify for the 40%
Correct.
if we submitted them all together?
Yes. I think this is where I didn't get an answer yet. I think that your 5 years will expire in 2030, or 2029. That's because the May submissions were 2029. So I don't know if September submissions are 2029 or 2030, so I'll find out.
So I think that would have to be a decision, and I'm not sure if that's a school committee decision or a town council's decision or a joint decision on, are you gonna wait until the end of the 5 years to submit for reimbursement so that you can get the maximum amount on the entire bond amount?
You don't have to wait until the end if you finish all your projects before that.
Okay.
You can do it every June 30th. So, and they give extensions sometimes, so you can, anytime, you submit in the summer for reimbursement. So anything, and you can do it revolving every year, it's just that you will not get, well,
Do you know what's qualifying for the health
actually, you
and
know what,
safety?
I think everything qualifies for
Say-
health and safety.
I was gonna say, if it's health and safety,
Yes, exactly,
they
so
might all.
anything that's health and safety.
Okay, so we wouldn't necessarily have to
And
wait.
so again, everything that's health and safety, so
But if we bundle a non-health and safety with a health and safety,
that's fine,
then we would get the entire.
correct, yes. But if it's like, say, I don't know, furniture,
Mhm.
then it's not health and safety.
But if it's furniture with a security vestibule, then it's all
Then it's health.
reimbursable.
It's supposed to be like over 25% of the project has to be allocated to health, general health, safety and security. So,
And then just as a reminder, so, we are, we're posting everything, on the Google Drive, and just for easy navigation, these are the parts and pieces, and you'll see, a drawing set. What is going to be added are the outline specifications, and that's basically a description of, and narratives, it's a description of what is the scope for each of the disciplines. So I just wanna make sure that everyone sees that. All right, and we'll go on. So what have we been doing lately? There was the question about the ride. We just had that recent second meeting, which actually it really was a very positive meeting with RIDE. Dr. De Silva is very pleased with the design. Mike presented it, and it is what you saw last time. We also did have a discussion with food service. Again, just as a reminder, this is an all-electric building, so all the equipment in the kitchen will be all electric. And then the development of the site design, which you'll be seeing. We talked about how the estimate, all the materials are going to the estimator tomorrow. There are a few resolutions that are required by RIDE that are all related to good things, commitment to using Energy Star equipment, compliance with Northeast CHIPS and that kind of thing. Historic is something that continues to be on our list to develop ideas about and ways of incorporating the tremendous value and asset of the site and its historic significance. And then we continue to prepare the reports and materials for the final stage 2 submission. This slide you've seen before just highlights everything in a nutshell: the 400 students, the size, the efficient building layout, the net zero energy, and the aspects of the site.
I have a question on the, it says, retaining walls are anticipated for fields. Is there any special reason for that, or?
Yeah, so when Matt, we're gonna look at the site plan next, which we'll have Matt come up to give us an overview. He's been working to develop, the site is not completely flat, and so where it's not flat, you do sometimes have to retain some of the land. And so I'll let you.
Matt, if you have it presented, that's a touch screen, so if you get too close to it, you'll
Yeah.
miss the slide.
Good to know, I would definitely touch. Alright, so we have the site here, and just a general overview, we have the building on the top left here with the parent access coming in off of Phillips Drive and following the blue line around where they can drop off there, and the buses coming in off of Route 1 Tower Hill and looping and exiting back on Tower Hill. So it is a completely separated design in that extent. We have a very welcoming front area where this orange arrow is, that's the front entrance of the school. We'll enhance that with some landscaping, and that'll be a good balance of trees for making it welcoming, but also providing sight lines throughout the site. We still maintain the existing curb cut at the north end of the site, where we have emergency vehicles only, and we'll have a secure access around that. That's really for your fire access to the field for maintenance.
So those fields are actually, they're basically sitting where the middle school is sitting right now?
Correct.
Yes.
That's pretty much where those are?
Correct.
So basically, they're gonna be on a whole new level of, we don't know what's what.
Right, and to talk about I'll get into the grading in a little bit. I just kind of go through the general layout and then talk about how the site functions a little bit more from a grading aspect, retaining walls, and how it kind of sits between Tower Hill and Route 1 and Phillips and the surrounding neighborhood. So to continue here, we have the emergency access, we have the service area in the back here, dumpsters, transformer, loading area, and a generator as well. And then as we get into the parking, we have two kind of sides to the parking here. We do have a separated lane here during pickup and drop off, but you will be able to access between there for emergency access and also event space. You don't want to have someone pull in here and have the slot full and not be able to have to pull all the way out around. So that will be accessible at that point, outside of the loading times.
And then the fencing goes on top of the walls, is what is that? Fencing goes on top of the walls. The walls are mainly there to level things off more or less.
Yep, exactly.
So
So
then the fence is a protective measure so that nobody falls off of the wall. Not necessarily a home run fence for the baseball
No,
field,
but
more
yeah,
of a
just a-
protective.
You don't have kids walking on them, and I know that feeling.
yeah. And it's a pretty small wall too. When we jump into the wall here, we're talking 4 or 5 feet max, just to kind of tie in the grades at the corners here, so we can provide the high school size field, baseball field, high school sized multi-use field for soccer, and other sports.
And there's still no room to find a track in that situation somewhere?
We did lay out some track options, and it kind of takes up this whole portion of the site, so there really wouldn't be any space for the building. But we have looked at that. We've overlaid a track and what it looks like. We're still exploring some options for, maybe some areas in here for like
You're gonna
a
spawn one?
100 yard section where you can do some practicing. So we're looking at areas
Very
to kind
important
of
sport.
accommodate that, maybe.
Wow, a lot of kids that sport. Okay, that's fine.
We have looked at it, we
Yeah,
even
it's
Yeah,
been,
no, just, you know,
recently,
just,
trying to
know
look at the
that's
land and
just,
how.
your voice
when it
comes
would
to our
work.
mind when we think about that. You've been,
Oh.
no, it's very
If
important.
you just finished watching all the Olympics,
No, it is,
and you
yes.
watch how impressive
Absolutely.
the track is there, you know, and
It's a very
that's,
important,
and for
yeah.
individual kids to perform, that's the one,
Absolutely.
so that is one
Sports
of the
are-
one spots.
So, one thought though that has been, talked about is that the path that we do have that goes all the way around the school, there are these opportunities where you sort of have these circuits throughout the site, and it might not be, a formal track as,
No, but it's a place to practice.
it's a place
I
to
mean,
practice.
When I ran track, we used to run the neighborhood
You could run,
at LaSalle
right,
Academy.
you could do loops around the school. The other thing that's great about it is if you lived in the neighborhood, you could do walking loops around it as well. So it's actually a, I can imagine that getting really utilized, so.
That's good.
Yeah, and there are
That's a walking
there's
track, too.
sidewalks along Route 1 here, where we're looking at, pedestrian access along here too, so, you could use this full space as an area for.
And when they stay on school property, that's very important, I
Yeah.
think, too.
Yeah,
I
and
know,
even,
I know now that they do run outside a lot,
Yep.
and that's dangerous.
yeah, and even if there's a way to kind of look at straightening this road up to provide that 100-yard area where you can do some, set up some hurdles or do some sprints in that area.
Thank you.
So, for the grade, kind of the grades here, we're sitting up higher at elevations, 49 to 45 in this range along the road, Route 1. And then the school is actually gonna sit lower at around elevation 42. So, right in this area, there'll be about a 3 to 4 foot drop off of the road. And then here, a little more as we had to extend this access drive down to be able to get down to where the school will be entering at around 42. And then as you go along the site, the general grade, as probably I was driving 102 in Phillips here, you're going down the hill, everything's shooting down, and there's actually a pretty big drop off down here. So at the corner of this site here, you're around elevation 30. So we set, and over here as well at the top. So we set the fields around that 37, 38 elevation, depending on the crowning and some of the sloping mounds and stuff. And so we ended up needing a small wall on the corner here where we have a fence on top. So we were looking at a 6-foot fence on top of the wall for safety, make sure no one's, falling.
No, that would be grass, or turf, it wouldn't, whatever.
Yes, this is all grass, natural grass field. Fields there. So, that's it, and then the fencing along the fields here, we have some residential properties. We have a 30-foot ball netting fence on here. During storms, it'll be able to rip away, so you're not designing massive foundations. A 30-foot, it's not a chain link fence all the way up. It's a netting that can detach, or be lowered. And I think usually you have that fencing kind of go to the dugouts, which are shown in orange here. We extended that fencing along the entire south side to protect any kind of foul balls from hitting those properties.
Thank you.
We also have a little bit lower fencing on the top for some of the other sports to protect it where you're shooting on the goals on that end. So we have a 20-foot high ball netting fence, which is standard for a soccer field in that area. So the stormwater area, we also are still in design. We have designated an area for stormwater in this corner that's at the lower side of the site where the existing septic is. And we're still looking at how exactly that's going to drain out, but it will be an improvement from the existing condition. We also currently have a 4-foot fence around the entire playing area. Kind of section that off. The orange arrows you can see here, those are your pedestrian access points getting to the fields from the school, from the parking lot. We're still developing exactly the path, which is going to be kind of depending on the grades and getting down to that field. the parking lots, we have 91 proposed parking spaces that are striped here. We had about 73 in the existing condition. And then during events, we can utilize some of these larger drive aisles that we have here for the parent queuing and the bus queuing for overflow parking. So we have a total overflow parking of about 128 total spaces, which has been an increase from the existing condition as well, which we're estimating around 110. The kind of landscaping, we're trying to provide a welcoming landscaping vegetation that also provides the sight lines to around the school. So when parents are dropping off and kids are getting off the bus, you can kind of see everything from the central location. You know, everyone's getting dropped off in this center island here for the parent queue, and then walking towards the school. There are some beautiful existing trees along the road there that we're going to maintain and preserve those. And then for the outdoor learning areas, we have 2 outdoor learning areas. We have this one in the front here that, again, we have a pedestrian access. This is going to be fenced in along the top. And then there'll be some berming, some amphitheater style seating. And we're also, there's security bollards for any kind of, errant vehicle that may come off the road there.
Oh, do you wanna talk about the leaching fields also?
Sure, and in the utilities, we have a leaching field. We're still looking into what exactly it would take, and if it's possible to get sewers. And the leaching field is located right here in the softball field. And that is at a higher elevation than the previous leaching field, where we think we have some pretty good soils for that area. The water, we have water both on readily available on Phillips on 102 and on Route 1 here. So we're looking at a loop that we can connect into both, provide hydrants for the building as required by code, and domestic water, which would come into around this service area here. Electric is also available off of Phillips where the existing school is served. We have a transformer located in the service area as well. This service area will be screened with some vegetation. So I think that pretty much covers the utilities and landscaping.
Yeah, and then we can go to a more detailed shot of the,
So the outdoor learning areas,
Yeah,
we're just gonna have a little bit more detailed shot of that.
oh, there we go.
So these areas here, we have this is the front area, Route 110 is right along here. We have the security bollards that you can see at letter F, concrete security bollards. And then, so keep in mind the grading is a little bit about 4 feet higher here. So you're gonna be coming down. We're gonna try to preserve those existing trees. And then we're actually gonna be, we'll have the fence located on that side, and then we'll, with some vegetation behind it, and then it'll start to berm up. That's what these contours are. So this will start to berm up and create this amphitheater style seating on the other side, which will really create a great space for people to gather and kind of extend that learning from the STEM areas out into this courtyard, while also providing a safe and secure area. So you don't have kids, trying to exit out. You don't really have anyone trying to enter in. It's kind of protected, screened, yet you'll still be able to see the school and highlight some of the features of the building in the front there. So that was a good balance in there. We're also exploring different material types with colored concrete, putting logos in this one of those concrete, and it's a color, it's a gray with some logos. As you can see, some options for ornamental fencing that would be in the front, the bollards that we showed some trees on the front island there, a couple tree grates, provide shade when people are waiting and loading, some benches. And then we have the area in the back of the school. There's another outdoor learning area there, another great gathering space, kind of get out and extend, you know, for teachers to cool the classroom outside on the next day.
Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you. Are there any questions about the site?
And this may be a question for the town, I'm not sure where this would fall in, but as far as adding that extra curb cut, and it's gonna be closer to that red light, what does that do to traffic? Do the lights have to be retimed? Is there any kind of traffic remediation that may have to be done to make sure the buses can get in and out effectively? And, cause that light, I think as most people know, can really back up at times,
Definitely.
especially along that Route 1 section.
That's a great question. Any curb cut has to be approved by Rhode Island Department of Transportation. So that's a great, and they'll evaluate all that. They'll evaluate the access to it, how close it is to the light, the traffic pattern in that area, but they have to approve any curb cuts.
And they would, is it possible they would ask for some remediation to be done if we wanna, like, they would grant the curb cut if you guys do this?
Possible, yes,
Okay.
absolutely,
That's what
absolutely.
Any other questions or thoughts? Okay, and I do wanna highlight, as Kenny mentioned, you know, we meet, weekly at least with, North Kingstown, but we also, have our own weekly meeting with all the consultants. So there's, you know, multiple meetings, as we continue to develop the project and all the details. Okay, thanks, Matt. So now we'll just, check in on the building, and it's, you know, just always bringing everyone back to, just as a reminder of what the current plan is. Oops.
Go back to the other one.
Actually, the zoomed in one, sorry, the outdoor learning.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. If I do it, there we go. Okay, hey guys. So I know there's some questions last time on the outdoor learning, where we had a kind of a big circle, a big blob out there, so we hopefully answered some of the questions, identified, give you a bit more of a scale. We've tucked it closer to the building, as Matt said, so it's really, this area right here is really the usable defined area, with those couple stadium seating steps, amphitheater seats, which are facing this way. So when the students are sitting here, they're facing back towards the building, back towards the media center, your technology room, and then it berms up, then back down, and then there's a really, Matt talks about a 4-foot grade change. It's very subtle. Actually, we're starting to model the site in 3D right now, and we'll share at the next meeting a bunch of views of what this looks like and how successful this berm and some of the landscaping can be to create, you know, that visual kind of buffer and also an acoustic buffer, utilizing some of the grades back towards the building. I think that's all I want to touch on that one. Ready to move forward.
Do you want me to check here?
Oh, that worked. All right. The plans, these are the same plans you looked at last time. We've been working really hard to get a lot more detail into the plans, you know, where the wall types, where the flooring, the lighting, where the plumbing fixtures, et cetera. So all the information is in the set that's going to be an estimator. So when we do get that estimate, it's very accurate. You know, they'll look at every single room, like count the sinks, take a look at where the CMU walls are. But the plan in general has not changed. It's just evolved into more detail, and you'll see that in the new sets. And then the outdoor learning area that we're just looking at has a connection off the main corridor, right here across from the gym, which has, you know, a visual access to it, but also physical access to outdoor learning. The media center through the technology room will be the other access point to that learning area. And then I think some of the comments maybe from this group, the working group, actually identified this. I think David mentioned the space here, the outdoor learning, a nice opportunity on the quieter side of the site to activate that at a much smaller scale outdoor learning space away from the street. So that's why we developed that space as well. I think it was a great suggestion.
I mean, the main part of the school is just two levels, you deal with the classrooms.
Exactly, yeah. So
But
that
that's, it's only a two-level building.
two levels, and it's only,
Okay.
this is the only two-level portion as well. You have a couple higher volumes of the building, and we pull those away towards the important
Gym.
part of the site, you know, close to the fields, away from the street, so we can maintain that. Actually, if you go to the next slide, helps well. So we shared this last time, and we're continuing to evolve this, like I said, model the site with the landscaping and context. We've developed a little bit more around the back, which we'll share with you next time. But once you get the context and the site and scale, we'll show you a couple of ground level views. You really get a good feel of how it meshes nicely with the neighborhood. You know, and these more traditional forms which reach out towards Tower Hill Road, which blend in with, you know, the familiar shapes and scales, residential scale of the neighborhood, I think will fit nicely. And then the big box spaces that we talked about, the gym, the caf, those larger volumes are tucked in away facing athletic fields. They don't really have a presence on the main street. And then your kind of main circulation spot, a little more contemporary space, bringing natural light into the school, runs right down through the heart of the school and connects all the spaces. If you go to the next one, I think it's just a back view. And then all the PV, we're gonna talk about PV in a second. And then one more, yeah. So this is the street level. There's a bit of a grade change here, but it's so subtle. Once you stretch it out over 100, 150 feet, it's a very subtle grade change. And the last one, I think we saw last time as well. So this is right where it says media center. There's right that little gentle berm is going to be, which kind of really protects and makes that space a little more intimate and tucks it nice and close to the school. So, you've seen before. Any comments or questions on anything that you've seen again? No? Okay. Getting structures up.
Yeah.
So, my name is Sophia Orr, I'm principal at RC Associates. I'm here to talk about structure. I usually don't present to the building committee, so if there's anything kind of technical, then just flag and I'll try to explain a little more. So what we have here is a foundation plan. This is really the thing that holds up the building. We see boxes here. There's some dashed lines over here. What this represents is just basically a reinforced concrete footing. The ones on the perimeter have to go down to frost. So this area is 3 by 4. The ones in the interior hold up steel columns. The ones that are in this wing over here hold up load-bearing CU walls. So I'm going to go back and carefully look for cars in the boring plan, so that in case there's any surprises there, but I didn't see anything before. So if we go up the building, you can see this is the second floor and the low roof framing plan. So these wings here, as you know, are classroom wings, and they are designed to be as efficient as we can. The bay sizes are exactly the right sizes for steel framing. So you can very, very carefully look right there. There's steel columns, steel beams. The floor is a concrete and metal deck. So that's these wings right here, very efficient. There is, you can see right here, it's called a firewall, and what that does is it reduces the building area enough so that you don't need the expense of spray fireproofing on the steel. So this was a good solution. So it basically effectively cuts the building, not in half, but it cuts the building to be small enough. So, can I do that?
Oh,
sorry. So, again, steel columns, steel beams in this area. In this area here, we have, we're really maximizing the efficiency of the building material. So we have a lot of CMU walls there. So there in that wing here, we're using those walls for both load-bearing and shear walls. So it's a combination of kind of two systems here. I just want to point out two areas right here. Those are the low roofs that have the mechanical units. So it's just an area that we have concrete and metal deck like we have on the second floor, and you could put the units on there. You don't need dunnage. It gives you a little bit of flexibility in the future if you want to change the units or move things around. You don't have to just work with just the dunnage. So it's a nice flexible area right there for those two. Again, low roofs over here. So on the low roofs, we have mostly just a 3-inch metal deck for the roof system. And go up to this is the high roof. And so this is all just steel framing. The gym has just steel trusses. We have an acoustical deck on the gym and the cafeteria, which is just a better performing deck for sound. And the rest of the roof has just a regular 3-inch metal deck. So very lightweight.
Quick question. There is no auditorium. Is there enough seating in the gymnasium to have, like, say, the 8th grade class come in, for like, a get together, whatever, where you can have a large group of people
yes.
seated,
We're figuring with the with the bleachers and then with some, you know, seats, the foldable chairs that you put out, and then some area for stage, probably about 500,
Okay, so you
yeah.
get that many people
In
with
the gym.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And
just kinda
then
wondering, 'cause it's
The
just where you have
cafeteria has been, it's really a cafetorium, cause it has the cafeteria and then a platform for, you know, any kind of little performance or kind of display. We're figuring, the seating for that would be 250. And that's after we had discussions with, Dave Flanagan and North Kingstown to come up with that number. Okay.
So that's an overview, so just reiterate, just trying to be as efficient as we can with the structure and the layout.
I have a question, it's sort of related to structural, but probably more architectural. I see you went with a gable roof over 3 parts of the building, which
Yes.
does, I guess I think that adds maybe aesthetics, but isn't that sort of wasted space? That gabled roof area that now you have to build and it's interior space that you can't use for anything else?
We're always struggling, there's always a balance of ducted, modern day mechanical systems with the size of ductwork, especially with the mechanical system that we have in this building. It's gonna be sizable fresh air ducts coming into the building. So it allows optimal ceiling height, which around 10 feet is perfect for acoustics and lighting, bringing natural light in. But we can utilize that space to run the ductworks. So there is a use for it, and be happy to have it.
Yeah.
But and that's something that will be factored into the estimate. We can
Yeah.
take a look at how that plays into the overall aesthetic, right? And we use it in just limited areas as well. So.
And interestingly, it actually, makes the angle on that side of the roof, ideal for the PV panels as a little plus, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
That's two quick questions.
Yes.
What's the deepest pile you plan to drive, and related to that, do you have any concern for unforeseen site conditions?
Sure, so we're not using piles. Piles are basically sticks that get driven into the ground or drilled into the ground. And so we have soil that's good enough that we can just use spread footings, so you just
So
dig a
it's
hole,
straight- just a
you know,
plain
3 foot,
spread
foot.
yeah, 3'4" down.
Which is good news.
Okay.
And then unforeseen conditions, well, we have, a report, a geotechnical investigation report that was done.
Yeah. And with that type of footing, you don't have as much of an issue either. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Okay, so now we'll go into, some of our, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, drawings.
Talk about those?
I can,
Okay.
I'm happy to. So, the first one actually is just, you just saw the site. What is very exciting about, this project is, we do have the geothermal wells, and the way that, this is all being, there's lots of things going on, as you can, can see as we talk through this, the project. The geothermal wells fit nicely over the parking areas, and they're divided into, 2 areas. So it's a total of 80, and then this sort of center area right here that aligns with the path into the school will also be where, the distribution and the connection back to the, mechanical room. So it's all very efficient. There's been a lot of thought given to how to make this very efficient, because efficiency leads to effectiveness, and effectiveness and efficiency lead to economy. So, that's that first.
Okay.
I actually need the, I just wanna see what the next thing is.
Already, I brought it up.
Oh, okay. Oh, and then, so, okay, so this slide is just, an overview. You can start to see all these red dots are where the mechanical engineer is, placing the heat pumps. So the way we're, using the geothermal is, basically 80-degree, water is then distributed throughout the building to these individual, heat pumps that then will have a fan that goes over the coil and then feeds the, either cools or heats the room based on the temperature needed at that particular time of the season. The other thing that, I think maybe in our next slide, so that's for heating and cooling, and then the ventilation is handled by, as Mike actually just discussed, we have a large DOAS, it's called a DOAS unit. I mean, for direct outside air. And that is located here. We have some other units, on the roof down at the south end, but there's very little, space on the roof that's taken by mechanical equipment, which therein, the good news is more space for PVs. And this is the PV diagram. So you can see that just about, I mean, I think it's about 75% of the roof can be covered by PVs. And the goal is to get as much as possible. And that allows us to have that balance of net zero energy. So we're producing as much as we make. And that, and you know, that we're going to be constantly auditing that and looking at that. The other thing that factors into all this is that our systems that are being designed for the heating and cooling of the building are going to be really efficient, because our envelope, meaning the walls and the roof of the building, are designed in such a way to really maintain and not have sort of that transfer of energy or heat or cooling from the inside to the outside and vice versa.
For the transformer
Okay.
location, right?
Yeah, so we have, so as Mr. Mollis and Dr. Duba have discussed, there has been a conclusion. This is not going to be a FEMA shelter, but it will act as an emergency shelter. So this, in a sort of lower level sense, you know, FEMA being up here and you have the other location. So this generator is being sized so that it addresses all, there's life safety things that it has to address by code. There's a minimum. But we're also, it's being sized so that it will keep the gym operational, as well as back up the cold storage for the kitchen. And it will be a 250 kW. And it would operate for about 24 to 48 hours. In addition, there will be a hookup that's being designed for the building that allows for an outside generator to come in if that was necessary. As an alternate, again, the conversation about cost comes up all the time. So we don't, there was a discussion about, well, if we have this hookup for a generator in an emergency situation, how much of the building will it serve? Well, we're gonna have what's called an add alternate to sort of capture what does that cost in our estimate. So we asked the estimator, how much would it cost if that transfer switch were to serve the entire school? You know, how much would that, so those are the kinds of things, but those are alternates, so they're not part of the base project, but then the North Kingstown has the option of looking at that and adding that in. But that is a cost control, you know, tool that we use, and we've been talking about that kind of thing in these meetings. And then I think we can go to the next one. And questions or discussion? And then I know there's gonna be more on the CIPs. Oh, so any other?
Is the heating and cooling design similar to what you've been putting in other buildings?
This is something, and you know what, I'm going to just sort of say that, you know, we're the architecture firm, and CMTA, our mechanical engineer, would be much more versed, but this is this is the kind of system that you install when you install a geothermal system. And it is, with the robust walls that we have and this system, we don't even need perimeter radiant heat in the building, so it's a very good system.
What kind of maintenance are we looking at for a geothermal system? Because I'm pretty sure we don't have anything like that in town.
So we discussed the maintenance kind of aspects of this, and you know, there were different options that were looked at, and this option where you have the heat pumps in the ceilings outside the classrooms, you know, in the ceilings outside, and then ducting into the classrooms, did, you know, when you weigh everything, that was the direction that was chosen at this time. So, any other thoughts?
I had asked this question of the superintendent earlier in the week, but at what point will we know like what the cost savings will be to operate the building?
We will know that very soon. That's part of the stage 2 submission. But the good news is we know that it's gonna be a good number, because it's, this is an ideal system, because it's geothermal, and then the electric is gonna be handled by the PVs, so it's gonna be very efficient.
As soon as we find out, I'll share that with
Yeah,
you.
it will be, and that will be part of this whole submission, so it will be easy to find, and we can go over how anything in these documents can be found easily.
I've had several people in the community ask me about that specifically, like what are the cost savings gonna be?
Yeah.
And we can present, when we get that information, we'll present that at the next
Absolutely.
stage two.
Because that's a great presentation, yeah.
Yeah.
Are there anything you guys want to hand or, no? Okay, good.
I got one more. Will there be a maintenance plan associated with the HVAC as part of the closeout documents?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So there's also commissioning agent, so the Northeast CHIPS has all other kinds of, requirements and things that are required, and then things that are suggested to be taken that look at and considered. And commissioning is, so meaning that people are trained, there's, balancing, reports that are done, testing and balancing that is done, all that is, part of the closeout. But that's a very important, because if you don't know how to operate it, that's a very important part of the whole process. Anything else?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next agenda item on here is for us to review the capital improvement projects for stage 2. The reason why this is back on the agenda is because we have made some changes from the first submittal of the CIP, where we were focusing on all of the priority 1 items. At one of the building committee meetings, we had talked about other options about renovations that we were doing at Davidson Middle School. We talked about, do we move forward with adding walls at Fishing Cove, Stony Lane, Woodnessett as part of this project. We shared that, hold on, let me back up. So those were discussed. Over the summer, we've had, as I said, we meet weekly with Perkins Eastman and Rouse, and sometimes more than that. We have made administratively some changes to that, that I think we shared some of that at one of our last building committee meetings, regarding taking some items out, adding some items in, so that we stay within the cost of the budget that we have for the bond. And bringing it forward again, because at the last school committee meeting, the school committee wanted to know if that was approved by this group, but also needing approval by school committee. The school committee approved 1 CIP, which was all priority 1, and we're looking at making some decisions at this level of the work that needs to get done. So you have in front of you, and I'm just gonna let you know, when I grabbed it, it was stapled out of order, so take the staple out and just reorder the pages, because when you look at it, I think it starts with page 4 versus page 1.
And the only other thing I want to add to that, Dr. Duber, is some of the items that we've added in were based off of conversations we had with RIDE.
Yes.
RIDE wanted, oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I figured when we talk about Davidson Middle School, we'll mention that, but what Mr. Waterman is referencing is one of our earlier meetings, with the school building authority with RIDE, going over the, renovations at Davidson Middle School. And I think I brought it up at a meeting here and also at school committee. Dr. Silva was really looking for more visual educational enhancements to the building. And there were recommendations that came out of that meeting that we had, along with our project team, to make some changes to that, and that's what's listed here. And one of those big major changes was to have a focus on renovating the media center. So that way it was a 21st century media center that is used by all students in the building, and all students have access to some educational enhancements to the building, as well as recommendations from the building principal, from meeting with others, staff in the building of areas to renovate. So that's in here. I want to stay in order so we're not jumping around, but I will go through all of that when we get there, and that's why those changes are there, because there were recommendations from the school and from RIDE. So if you look at this document, and Inga, you put this together, so you can jump in as I explain this. when you look at this, the column, the first column with numbers says original CIP priority 1 presented to school committee on 5/10. That includes all of the projects that were priority 1 projects that we had reviewed back in May, we had brought to school committee. Since then, the building committee has met and we have met and reviewed other projects and gone back and forth on some of these projects. The second column are those same projects, but we had asked through looking at these renovations and working with Rouse to consider a build-up roof, correct? I want to make sure that column is including that. Or no, is that in that column or
No, so,
No, that's not, that
So
one,
the
so that
first-
is the,
The first non-colored column is basically how it was presented on 5/10, because the school committee wanted to see exactly the projects and the cost, as it was known on 5/10.
that's, I'm sorry, and right, and that is with the new estimates.
So the
So that
second
second
column is
column
the
has
when
the
you
new-
add, same
has the
thing
new
with new
estimates.
estimates, because some numbers have changed
Mhm.
slightly, because the estimates were not as developed at the time. Then the third column represents
That has the build-up.
everything that was presented on August 1st with a build-up roof and correct estimates. So this is the third, column number 3, which we should probably have numbered, but the column number 3 is what was presented and recommended on August 1st school committee meeting with updated estimates. And it totals, it totals 64,519,200. So, and then basically what we did is, don't look at the highlighted column, at the orange and the yellows, if you don't look at those. What we did is that we went, because the question from the committee was what has changed from May to August. What was removed and what was added. First thing that changed is the estimates themselves, so we showed that. Second thing that changed is that items in blue have not changed. So everything that is blue translates in both columns. Those items remained and the costs have maybe changed or maybe didn't. In my opinion, the initial column of 510, it doesn't matter what the cost is, it's no longer that cost. So we're comparing column 2 and column 3. Items in green were not included in May, but were included or changed in August. And those items include TPO roof and also the infrared scan, because the infrared scan was not included in May. We did not anticipate the need for that. So if you go down, you also have, if you go down, say, to your pages 4 and pages 5, you see those kind of like pinkish oranges items, and those items were in May but are no longer in August. So those projects were no longer recommended to proceed because other things were recommended instead to meet a target of roughly, so 60 million was the target that we are targeting in the bond, but the total proposed value of projects is 64, which you can do, and you can submit a little bit over and right. You can say that when we do financing plans, we say 137 is bond, and then there is, say, 4 million. We can say like a revolving fund, and that is if, say, there are savings somewhere in the process, maybe there is some I don't know, incentives or rebates that were identified in the process. If the projects are in the scope and are available, the district can still do those projects. Maybe there are some CIP funds that are available. You can still do those projects. I'm sorry, CIP, I mean more like a revolving fund. You can do projects and get reimbursement. So this is why we often submit a little bit more to write. You cannot submit double because you have to substantiate the reasoning, and obviously you don't have double the money, but you can submit on a little overage to try and get as many projects that might happen. Then the columns 4 and 5, this was kind of our understanding as a design team, as an OPM team. We were trying during our August 1st meeting, given the timeline and us needing to know what we're doing, what we're drafting. We can't stop and wait because we have to proceed. We basically highlighted projects we think we're proceeding on, and then projects that we think are currently on hold. So they highlighted in bright yellow are the projects that we're sort of waiting until the 20th, and then all the other ones we think we're moving forward with, at least until we get any further direction. We will reshuffle after the 20th. I just made a point that during the August 1st committee meetings that it's just time is of the essence, because we do have to meet a deadline. So, and if we don't submit, we don't get the funding. So it's better to submit than not, I guess. That's where I'm, so if we submit on $50 million worth of work, but the bond is for $60 million, you don't get reimbursed.
So I think what would be helpful is if we go through looking at column 3, because that is what we had presented last time to the school committee, and we had talked about some of this at our July meeting. The reasons why some stuff was pulled out and why stuff was added, and that way I want to make sure this committee has a clear understanding of looking at that as far as projects that we want to do going forward, and then if there are projects that we said, okay, we're pulling out, and the committee thinks, you know what, no, we really should be doing that, we can talk about adding those in, but we just need to have an understanding that we will be over budget, but if we submit it to RIDE and there is money, we can still do that project. But I just be clear as to what the projects are that we are doing and what those secondary projects are, if there is money to do and still get reimbursed by RIDE.
Quick question.
Yes.
The dollar value at the total also includes contingency and escalation?
Yes.
Okay.
So each of those values will have a backup estimate in the submission. So we are working with the estimator. Rouse is working with the estimator.
Dr. David?
Yes.
And just from the last school committee meeting, and I think what the school committee is looking for is like a voted on recommendation from this committee, saying
Yes.
this is what we think. So when we're reviewing this now, we should look at it in that light, I think.
Right, I wanna, before we leave tonight, I wanna vote on this, that we have the support from this building committee of what is being brought forward. So if we just kind of look at this, look at page 1, looking at column 3, these are the costs of the roofs, and this is with a build-up roof. A build-up roof is also gonna provide us 30+ years, right? Like
It's the better style roof, correct? It's the longer duration.
and do we know like how, the lifetime of those roofs? Okay. Actually,
Jim, do you mind coming to the
I was
microphone?
gonna say, or even just sliding up to the table, because we need to make sure we pick you up on video.
So build-up roofs like these have 30 to 40-year warranty depending on the system. There's 2 systems you can use, the cold or the hot applied, and they typically last around 50 years. They're built to last 50 years.
You're saying 50, not 15, correct?
Yeah, 50 years. Sorry.
That's the life expectancy
Life
for a
expectancy.
standard built-up roof system.
So the reason why we're making that recommendation of going with a more expensive roof is because it's going to last longer and give us more lifetime usage for the schools, for the town.
That's right.
So, and so that would be this then, and we also have in here the cost for infrared survey, because if we do the infrared survey, we can also look to see where in each of the buildings within the roofs that we can save on insulation.
Correct.
And that would
So we
bring
don't have
costs
to do a complete tear off, we can keep some of the insulation that is still effective and then add to that insulation with some new insulation in addition to the built-up roof
So
system.
there's a small cost, for example, at the high school it would be $5,300, at Hamilton it would be $4,400 to do the infrared study, but in the end actually could save us
Lots.
And we have a
money
history
on
of that at Davisville Middle School.
Yeah, we did that at Davis Middle School, and we actually saved just over 50% of the roof insulation on that roof.
So I have to attest, I have quite a bit of experience with roofing projects. I've done a lot of roofs, and I'd say more often than not, when we do the scan, we find a lot of dry insulation we don't have to replace.
Right.
We still have to maybe add or replace because to meet like the R value and stuff, but it's a really, it's extremely short money, and there tends to be a lot of savings.
Jim, just to clarify, you said at DMS, we saved roughly 50% of the installation?
Yes.
Approximate dollar value on that?
Don't
No.
know offhand.
Sorry, Richard.
So that's the same in every school. Are there any questions regarding what we're recommending for the roofs?
I guess I'm confused, so which column is the official recommendation?
So
Four, three or four?
Number 3. So look at
Number 4 is what we're moving forward with.
well,
No.
Well, what we're
Number
proposing.
3 is what I think
number
about.
3 is what we brought forward to
Right.
school committee. I want to go through that first because we took some items out to try to stay within budget, and then we can explain.
So I have a question on the roof, but it may be a little early, so I'm not sure, you can tell me, is, a concern that we're investing $3.8 million into a roof at Davisville Academy, but it appears we've removed almost all the improvements at Davisville Middle. And if I'm reading that right, that's concerning.
We'll get there.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was too early.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
we'll get there. I'll explain why that was, we're not removing, but we'll
Okay.
explain why it
Sure.
shows that in that column. Did you have,
I'll let you finish, and then if I still have it, I'll bring it up later.
okay. So the next section of the roofs would be the vestibules. So on page 3 in the middle, we have security vestibules, doors, windows is how that's listed. On page 3. Because page 2 is, oh, yeah, sorry, skip that. Sorry, on page 2, the ADA upgrades. So we're still looking at ADA upgrades at Davisville Middle School, which is $100,000. Fishing Cove for $6,300, Hamilton for $75, and Quidnesset ADA upgrades for $147, and Stony Lane for $66. So those are still recommended to move forward. Then we have the security vestibules, which are on there for the schools. Those were part of priority 1, and they're still there. So if we go through, that's Davisville Academy, Fishing Cove. At Forest Park, it wasn't included in the priority 1, but would like to add it, is to remove and replace the failing window gaskets at Forest Park. That's for $89,500. We have the security vestibule for Hamilton, for Quidnesset. And we go on to page 4, we have the security vestibule for Stony Lane. If you look at it, there is a price difference between Quidnesset from what the estimate was, but after doing the drawings and what is feasible in the space,
It was larger
talk to
in
that,
size.
it's a smaller space that is actually getting blocked off to make that vestibule. And it's based on where the doors are from the why don't
The
you explain that?
cafetorium, basically you got egress doors at certain locations off the cafetorium to the main corridor that kind of goes from front to back. And we don't want to block that off with sort of a security man-lock type vestibule. So we made it smaller so that we have a free egress or not diminishing the egress from inside the building to get to the outside of the building. So therefore, the way we designed it is we don't impede on that activity with this vestibule that we're adding. Essentially, that's it.
Thank you. And And if anyone's looking at this thinking Stony Lane and Quinnesset has a similar setup, so it's a question I asked, the doors are set differently within the building, and that's why the vestibules would be set differently, even though from the outside it looks the same. Fire alarm replacement for Forest Park is still on there for $237,700. And then we move on to the HVAC. In column 3, we removed air conditioning out of the schools because we were trying to balance out within budget of the work that we need to do and what would come out. So this column, we've recommended to remove AC and cooling in the schools. So that is the difference from original submission to what is in column 3 and what we shared at the school committee meeting. So you'll see that the heating ventilation is in here, but the coolant is not. And what is added and replaced to that is a building management system, because that'll make the system more efficient. And that's what's shaded in green. So if you look at Davisville Academy, you can see the AC was removed, heating ventilation's still there, and then we added the building management system. And that is similar to other schools as well.
And walls,
Not Davisville Middle School,
right?
Davisville Middle School.
Right. So again, so and then at Davisville Middle School, because of the structure of the building and the concerns that we know that we have there, we do have air conditioning input in at DMS, along with the building management system. You can see at Fish and Cove where coolant was removed, the BMS was added. On page 5, go to Forest Park, which is similar to coolant was removed, the BMS was added. You can see that same case at Hamilton. The high school, we do not have a BMS system there.
There's one existing, correct?
That's
There's
right.
an
Okay.
existing one.
Existing,
So we've been
And that one, we
adding
don't
on-
need
adding on
upgrading
to
on
that.
that one, or, okay.
Whenever we add new equipment to it, we integrate that new equipment into the existing system, correct?
And then Quidnesset is similar where the coolant was removed, the BMS system was added in, and the same for Stony Lane. Any questions on that? So this is where look for recommendation from the building committee. Do you agree with that? Or would we say that we should be adding the AC back in?
With the climate change, it could be a little bit drastic, but we are focusing on heating more than cooling, and actually in the latest years, it has been a little bit reversed, where the winter is not as winter and the summer has becoming very hot. How do we face that?
And I think one of the challenges we're looking to address is aging heating systems. Aging, inefficient heating systems that ultimately, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong here, but ultimately need replacement. The AC components, with the exception of Davisville Middle School and the current Wickford Middle School, our elementary schools have pockets, I don't wanna say complete because it's not complete, but significant pockets of cooling, but it's through less than efficient window units. So there is cooling, it's not efficient cooling, it's not what we want, but there is something there. And when one of those window units breaks, we replace it with another window unit. It's not what we want, but we have
It's
something.
also not consistent in all the buildings either. So,
Well, there is, so like Stony Lane, Quinnesset, they have rooftop units, part of Fish and Cove has rooftop units. The other areas, again, not complete, not 100%, but significant chunks of Forest Park, Fish and Cove, Hamilton, they have window units that serve. There are areas that don't have anything, but there are significant chunks of large classroom spaces that have window units that will at least bring down the temperature. Davisville Middle School in Wickford, I think they just have the cafeterias have AC. So that was, that was one of the things that entered into our thought process at DMS is, well, if Wickford's getting a new school with a new HVAC system, having, Davisville Middle School with nothing, they would be the only school with no cooling. So that was kind of our thought process on why we left the HVAC, specifically cooling in at Davisville Middle School, is for equity between our two middle schools. Again, the elementary schools, Fishing Cove, Quid, the large open areas, they have rooftop cooling. Forest Park, Hamilton, Fishing Cove, that doesn't have a rooftop unit. Many of those classrooms have window units.
I guess we're also thinking about buildings that are mainly one story versus Davisville is 2 stories, and Fishing Cove has the second.
The 2-story portion of Fishing Cove does have the rooftop unit, so it does have cooling.
You know, as much as I would like for all of these schools to have air conditioning, when I have to look at, you know, where we're putting our money and that sort of thing, and I think some of the other priorities that you've said about with that they're probably a higher priority to me than the air conditioning. And I know there will be teachers who will hate to hear that.
Well, and the other thing I want to go back to is our conversation with RIDE. I think this was our first conversation with RIDE, in that we had, and Dr. Juba hasn't got to the next part, which has a lot of our educational enhancements, but this is what RIDE, you know, RIDE gave us feedback. I'm not gonna say pushback, but RIDE gave us feedback on design elements of the middle school that they wanted us to look at. And Perkins Eastman made some of those adjustments. They also gave us feedback on the capital improvement and said, there's not a lot of educational enhancements in here. We're not just, RIDE wasn't just looking for infrastructure upgrades. They're also looking, they understand that there'll be some need for infrastructure upgrades, but they also pushed us pretty hard on finding some educational enhancements. And I think that's what Dr. Duva is gonna go into next. So, yes, it hurts. I would love, buildings with energy efficient HVAC systems that do both heating and cooling, tied with the building management system, so that, you know, unoccupied spaces aren't getting heated and cooled, or it at least gets adjusted.
It's coming.
Yeah, it at least gets adjusted so that, you know, maybe it's kept at 76 degrees or 78 degrees, so that we don't have to worry about mold and that stuff. But I mean, I'm excited about some of the stuff Dr. Duva is about to talk about. I don't want to steal his thunder.
No, it makes sense if you prioritize the replacement, because you are at that stage, at that I get. That was basically kind of.
It hurt to take out.
No, I get it, but it makes sense.
If I may
Put it
add
that
about
way, it makes
RIDE,
sense.
so they don't necessarily dismiss the need for health and safety and safe, warm and dry, warm, safe and dry. That message that RIDE has had, maybe like from earlier years, like from 2018, 2015, you know, that was always keep your schools, and that's very important, and it's above and beyond regular maintenance, but they have been sort of gearing towards do that, but also give, don't forget the educational enhancement piece, because ultimately they are about education, so they do want districts to at least try and pay attention to, you know, what else can be done for educational purposes, and those things are like adding walls or media centers. Those are kind of like easy things that you can say, okay, well, people see, kids use, you know, those spaces will get utilized. They help the sort of 21st century learning. So they have been asking and talking to districts to not forget about those, although, you know, roofs are very important, and it's very hard to make a choice between a roof and a media center, right? Because it looks like, why would you need one if you need a roof? But it's almost like they're trying to kind of meet halfway. So, if I may understand it correctly, I don't know if that's what you hear as well.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit about the building management systems are not inexpensive, and I guess there will be some efficiency, so it'll be economical for that reason, but you're saying it will also improve the cooling situation?
And one of the reasons we added in building management systems is, as you may or may not be aware, we've done some significant lighting projects with Rhode Island Energy. For example, we did the tennis courts in AP, somewhere between 75 and 80% of the overall cost. The next thing they're hitting, so their first hit was like lighting in schools. Now they expanded it to outside lighting. The next area they're going to is building management systems. So one of the thoughts is I know of a district in Rhode Island that is starting to get these significantly paid for. If we have this in our plan, so earlier in the presentation it was mentioned about potential savings, if there are cost savings, if there are rebates. So one of the thoughts is if we put in overage, but Rhode Island Energy picks up 80% of the cost of a BMS system, and then we pick up partial cost, we get reimbursement on that, we don't have to pay for that 80%, it was covered in there. So there's also, that was one of the other triggers for, I was at a meeting with Rhode Island Energy and facility directors from across the state. It was at a facility director meeting where they invited, I know representatives from RIDE were there, superintendents were there, and Rhode Island Energy is really pushing. I mean, we all get paid a fee on our bill for efficiency, and they're targeting large users of energy. We are a large user of energy, so they want to help us save money because it also helps them save on their infrastructure and their grid needs. So BMS systems is one of the areas where they're looking to start to incentivize heavily, which is one of the reasons we are pushing it. Jim, I'll let you talk to the actual logistics of what a BMS system can do, because I think you may have more.
So, obviously, like a building management system that Mike kind of alluded to, you can actually control individual rooms for that matter.
So for example, at Hamilton, we have a warm side. I was in the building this morning. Same building, rooms that didn't have cooling were significantly cooler than rooms that were getting hit with the sun. So you could activate, the opposite of that in the winter. You can have the heat come on the cool side with a building management system versus not have the heat come on. Right now, our system is on or off.
Right.
So you hit those October mornings where it's like 45, 50 degrees. Everybody comes in and it's cold. We turn the heat on, but by 10, there's the temperature 70 degrees. Everybody's sweltering, so we have to shut the heat off. So we don't really have it's on or off.
Yeah, and then the building management system is basically a live system that is constantly monitoring sort of the environment that the school is situated in versus a west side and an east side or a north side and a south side, and be able to kind of recalibrate the equipment that it's tied to sort of efficiently give you either air conditioning or heat, depending on what day it is, what time of year it is, and what's going on the outside of the building. So that is where you're gonna get the savings in terms of the amount of energy used over time. And obviously that helps Rhode Island Energy in terms of the infrastructure that's kind of feeding all of this stuff. To be able to give you what you need versus just giving you something. So it's all sort of calculated up front relative to these systems. So they're smart systems essentially.
But we're covering the entire cost as if we had to. So we're putting it in our plan, but that's also one of our thoughts as to why we're going over is I think it's added up to around $3 million ish. If we get a significant amount of that covered, partial reimbursement on the other, that frees up money for us to go above the 60. Same thing, I believe, Tina, I'll put you on the spot a little bit, but I know we've talked about incentives for the solar, for the geothermal, like recovering costs there as well. Like those are the conversations that come up in those meetings that we're having, which is why we've talked a number of times about going, not just hitting the exactly $60 million mark, but going over so that if we do capitalize on these, we can do more projects.
Understand, thank you.
You're welcome. We've done the crash course on EMS.
And I gotta go back to where it was.
I think it was page 6 on the top half is
Starting with the plumbing, right?
So we're going, we just finished the HVAC.
Yeah,
We're
so
starting the
so
plumbing.
then we have number 5, which is the interior and the plumbing. So that's the last section here. So, and if you look at column 3, looking at Davisville Middle School. So this gets into the renovations that we wanna do at Davisville Middle School. They are recommendations that are coming from the school and recommendations that are coming from RIDE. This is different from what was presented prior. So it's replacing, updating the bathrooms. So the student bathrooms through the building, that's on here twice. You have a P1 and an A18, and that's replacing bathrooms. You also have on here, remove existing water coolers and replace with the new high-low bottle filling water cooler systems. That's what's in blue. Then in green, this here, these are, again, recommendations that are coming forward from school and from RIDE to remove and replace the gymnasium operable panel wall system. So it's the wall in the gym, the divider, replacing that. That's at a cost of $601,900. The next one, there are some classrooms that have wall partitions that are removable, and there was a request from teachers to have permanent walls put in versus those movable walls.
And also
They're
give
not
us a
really
good
supposed to
STC value from one space to the other space, because right now, those operable walls that are not really being used as operable walls anymore, there's all kinds of leaks coming from one space to another. which-
When you say STC, I think you're talking about sound
transmitting.
carrying from one room to another. So they're just, the old foldable walls that if you wanted to have a large space, you have a large space. If you wanted to cut it in half, you pull them across. That's what's separating some of our classrooms at Davisville Middle School. So this item would be taking out the temporary walls and putting up permanent.
And meeting CHIPS standards at the same time,
Which is good news.
yes.
The next item on here, looking at, which says new A52, that's providing a conference room within the existing main office and clinic suites. There was no conference room in the building, and that was a request from the buildings that when they're having meetings, there might be special education meetings, planning meetings, other meetings with families, they actually have a space that they can use.
Jim, is that more of like a reconfiguration of the office? Cause I just don't want somebody to look at this and say, $162,000 for a conference room seems like a lot. It's more than just a conference room, that's kind of the generalization of it.
Correct.
But it's more than just, it's looking at that.
It's not just that conference room.
Yeah, it's looking at that space.
Right. So
But that's gonna be the net add, so there's still gonna be, right now, there's a principal's office, an assistant principal's office, clerks. Those are also gonna be there, but the new thing that's gonna be there is gonna be a conference room. But all that other stuff is getting touched.
Correct. Nurses suite, you know,
Yep.
nurses area too, is also.
We're not, no, we're not touching the nurses
Not
suite,
nurses?
no.
Okay, one time we were talking.
At one point we were, but we are not now.
And the next one is removing, and replacing the first floor student lockers. And again, that was a request for us to
Yeah,
replace the lockers.
right now you got 9-inch wide lockers, and everybody from first grade to fifth grade or further have backpacks and they're loaded with stuff. They just don't have the room to be able to put their stuff into a suitable size space. So we're basically matching what was done on the second floor, we're putting it on the first floor so that everybody has the same size locker and amenities that the rest of the school has.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing, we're just matching what is already in part of the building. So
Right.
this has partially been already upgraded.
Correct.
Then the last item on this page, again, this is a recommendation from RIDE to renovate the existing media center into a 21st century learning center. And also in doing that, we're also going to put on the outskirts of that area, office spaces, community office spaces for guidance, social workers, school psychologists, student support, so like our mental health staff. So that would be included as part of the renovations of the media center. And then it's bringing that to updating into 21st century learning, and it's a space that's used by everyone in that building. So that's what we're recommending, and that's part of what we would like approval from tonight from the building committee, if you're in agreement with that, of making those renovations at DMS, so we can bring that forward to the school committee.
And that continues on, that category continues on, because you have additions at, Fish and Cove in the same category.
Yeah,
Page
just
7.
So then, top page 7, again in blue, this was already here. This is the, remove and replace the gas-fired water heater for Davisville Academy, remove existing water coolers at Davisville Academy. Fishing Cove, remove and replace plumbing fixtures in classrooms, toilets, ADA compliance, ADA upgrades. And then in green at Fishing Cove, again, this is something new. We want to consider this. This came up in conversation at school committee meetings. This is why we did this, because they want to know what the cost would be. And so we asked them to bring those estimates forward, and we brought this to them at the August 1st meeting. This would be adding walls in the upstairs of Fishing Cove, that loft area where there's no walls. And that would be.
And downstairs.
And downstairs, yes, thank you. It's the
It's
other
basically
side
like
of
a two-level,
Yeah.
it's a two-level of that existing addition.
And that's for $1.8 million.
And that includes the HVAC modifications and electrical
Electric, yeah,
work.
includes
So that's,
everything.
I mean, that's putting walls up at Fishing Cove. That's
Yeah.
exciting.
And that includes all the work that goes into that.
And real fire alarm systems as well.
Then we have Forest Park, which again, it's the ADA, plumbing, toileting. Hamilton, same thing. High School, remove existing water coolers and replace water cooling systems. We have here in green is to remove the existing railing at the auditorium balcony. If anyone's been on the very top, if you've been there for concerts, plays, at the top of the high school, that rail is very, very low. And there's safety concerns there, so that's why this item is on here. It wasn't there before, but it is on there now. Install ambulatory access stalls at the restrooms at the high school. Go down to Quinnesset, replacing water cooling systems. And again, at Quinnesset, similar to Fishing Cove, we would equip the entire building with walls. That would include doors in and out of classrooms, the associated HVAC, the electrical, the fire, all of that is included within that estimated price. And then it brings us to Stony Lane, which is very similar. We had already there about replacing the water cooling systems, but adding the walls, as what we said at Quinnesset, that includes walls, doors, electric, HVAC, fire alarm system, and that's $3.4 million. So with those recommendations, that's what we shared with the school committee at the August 1st meeting. We pulled out AC at the schools except DNS. The total cost of all those projects brings us to $64,519,200. We know that our budget that we have is 60 million. So we would also want to identify what the projects would be that we would do if there's additional funds. Because we want to bring forward to RIDE so that way we get approved and we can get the reimbursements. But we also know that would be based on any reimbursements we get, any other revolving funds we have within our CIP over those 5 years.
So 2 questions.
Yes.
For tonight, you're asking the building committee to support everything listed in column 3.
Yes.
That will be the CIP that we're moving forward.
Yes.
So we as a building committee, as far as our vote tonight, can't ignore columns 4, 5, and 6. Has nothing to do with tonight's vote.
4, 5, and 6, let me make sure, so we are all clear on this. That is for the work that, and you put that together, what work is getting done as far as the design. Because if you look at column 5,
Yep.
which is the total of the 12,102,
Yep.
that's already in
Column 3. Yeah, where I'm confused is, so again, just for the build, so because if, I'm just one member of the committee, so I'm having trouble following it. We're being asked, I completely follow the superintendent's description of we're being asked to, column 3 now has some changes from the last time we voted. So the superintendent appears to be asking the building committee, do we support the new column 3? Where I'm confused is that I'm told that column 4 is in column 3, and column 5 is in column 3, and column 4 and column 5 equals 71 million, so I'm kinda confused.
So I had it before where it was equal 64 million.
Yep.
But it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I know that then you've gone through a little bit more of work on this. So it's my understanding, because, and I think maybe it was like a little bit of what we heard during the school committee meeting was slightly different. So it was my understanding that the school committee asked us to proceed on everything that's in column 3, but only the items that are in column 3 that were there before, right? So only on the blue items. So, but I think it was actually to proceed on priority ones. So we went through and found the priority ones, and I guess we left the committee, school committee, understanding that they asked us to just keep going on priority ones. So there's a little bit of a mix in that orange column right now.
That orange column includes items that we're asking to take out, right?
Right.
That orange list includes the cooling.
Okay,
Correct.
so column 5 includes projects that are
Column
not in
four.
column 4 includes projects that are not in column 3 that we intend on going forward with. Everything in column 5 is in column 3. Everything in yellow is in column 3.
Yes.
So I know I'm repeating myself, but it's for
Yes.
me. Everything in yellow is in column 3.
Yeah.
But that column 4,
Yep.
we can all ignore it, pretty much.
Right.
We can ignore, because there's projects in there that we're not moving forward with.
No,
We
I'm
don't
sorry?
know.
What the
We
school
don't know.
committee wants to move forward with.
Column 4 are all of the priority ones.
That school
But-
committee,
That
with
school
that
committee
told us to
that's
go.
what school committee originally approved.
But they've changed their mind.
No.
No.
So then why isn't column 4 and column 3?
So column 4, what Ingrid did, she put all of the priority ones there.
In column
Right,
4?
because what was said at the last school committee meeting, was we approved priority one. Okay, so column 4, right, Inga, would be all of the priority ones.
So then,
Yes, so for example, if on page 4,
I
on page
understand,
4.
all right, go ahead.
So this is what I would say is, I think that our town, if we're gonna be going out for a vote, having heard people, having talked to people about air conditioning for years for various buildings, and I hear people say, oh, we don't need air conditioning, oh, we're New Englanders and that sort of thing. I think we will have an easier time of selling a bond that is column 3. That even though you have column 4 that has some of the HVA stuff in it, if you're telling me that column 3 has the educational stuff in it, and yes, there is some HVAC for anything that's 2 stories, and I think that would be an easier sell to say to folks, well, come on, you've been in 2-story buildings, how can you live in a 2-story building or teach in a 2-story building that doesn't have air conditioning? But for the 1-story buildings, which is I think you'll have an easier time of getting a bond pass that is the appropriate number for number 3 than you will for number 4.
And I
I think we
agree.
put up
My
walls.
problem, again, I'm one member, and I could be the only one. If I am, I really apologize, because I'm usually pretty good with numbers. But I'm still confused. And I agree with what Kim's saying. The school committee took our original CIP. They added projects to it, and that's the new column 3.
School committee didn't
No.
add
No,
anything.
the school
Well, they
committee-
recommended,
No, school
No.
committee didn't do anything, no. The school committee approved the priority, like, we put forward priority 1, school committee approved priority 1 projects.
Okay.
Okay, that's what the orange is.
So
if
the
you
school
look at
committee has
orange-
approved the orange column 4.
Right, that was, right, that would be all of the.
Yep, this is with all the it's literally just all the cooling,
So the school committee has approved 59 million of projects.
correct.
So then what are we voting on tonight?
So what we're going to look at for tonight is column 3.
Got
Because
that.
column 3 include the educational enhancements and the renovations at Davis Middle School.
But does everything,
Minus the air conditioning.
understand, but again, the math, and it's me, but the math is not adding up. I went through
It
this.
doesn't
So
add up.
It doesn't add up
These
because,
projects
Ralph,
are
can I take a swing at it?
This and this will not add up,
why not?
So,
because.
Ralph, column 1 was an original estimate.
I got that.
So correct me if I'm wrong, is column 1 and column 4 the same but just re-estimated?
It could be, but that still won't answer my
No.
question. But
No.
that still won't answer my question. I appreciate that. My point, and again, I could be the only one, and I know it's getting late and I can't apologize enough, but before I know how to vote, I have to understand this. I went through this. Everything in column 4 is not in column 5. 2 separate, so you'll never see a repeat. You'll never see an orange with a yellow. So that means that the priority 1 is 59 million, and you're saying that that's in column 3. And The yellow is the things that the school committee put on hold, waiting for our vote. So that should be in column 3. So column 3 should be $71 million.
We
Is
pulled out
it
the
column
EC,
4, column 3 plus the HVAC?
Correct.
Correct.
Column 3 does not have
Column
EC.
4 is column 3?
Plus
Then how is it lower?
No, it's not.
Sure it is.
On page-
Column 4 is 59 million, column 3 is 64,
Because column 4 doesn't have the educational enhancements.
Doesn't have the
Right,
roofs.
right.
which is in the yellow.
Yeah, 30 years.
So again, why doesn't the
Oh, is it
orange
column
and the yellow add up?
So the orange and the yellow, so the
So-
orange and the yellow.
Won't add up to
It
column
will
3.
not add up.
No, won't
for
add up,
column-
Because
won't
the
add up to
orange-
column 3 'cause it's
So
more.
the orange
It includes more
includes
items.
TPO, not built-up roofs.
That's
So
a
they're,
difference.
they're not the same, because the orange includes new TPO roofs, not built-up roof systems. Column 3 includes built-up roof systems, which is more expensive than the TPO roof systems. So they don't match up. And then the orange doesn't include the internal wall renovation work. So
'Cause that wasn't
then the
priority one.
yellow does, so then you don't get those, you can't add them together because they will never add together.
And when you look at 3, column 3, it doesn't include the AC that is in column 4.
Yeah, so it's,
So that's why.
It's just a
4
different
and
kind of
5 aren't
breakdown
gonna add up.
for
yeah.
options, you know,
You
built
can't
up
really
roof
add them
versus
together.
TPO roof. air
Would it be
conditioning.
easier to take column 3, and if somebody had strong feelings on something that had been removed, add that into column 3, it would change the dollar amount. But maybe take column 3 as the baseline, and if you wanted whatever it is you wanted, you just, the
Yes.
building committee says, we wanna move forward with column 3 and add X, Y, or Z.
Yes.
Maybe is that the better way to go
So
about,
if you look at column
Yeah,
and if something's missing, just add it.
And basically, column 4 is what we think the school, because my question was at the school committee, what do we proceed with? Our question was while we're waiting on their review, because they
Design
asked
team couldn't stop.
chronological
Yeah.
kind of explanation, which this tells you the story, what happened from May to August. And it's our understanding that they asked us to, they said, just proceed with priority ones until we give you any other notice. So we are prioritizing priority ones. And what we may do is, if some of those priority ones are not going to be voted on today, then we'll just stop working on them.
So, so 4 will be changed based on what
Correct.
we recommend and what school committee.
Correct, so there'll be another column, yeah.
So-
I
so-
think the coloring may be a little bit,
Is sort of obsolete at this point.
Yeah.
And that, thank you, and so, because in other words, Kenny just pointed something out to me, so, then again, I apologize for anyone who may have misunderstood my question. I said, is everything in column 4 and column 3? And the answer was yes. And that's not true.
yeah, no, it's not true.
That's not true,
No.
okay. And that's what was, because if everything in column 4 is in 3, and everything in 5 is in 3, then how, and so now he's showing me there's things that are in the orange column that we have decided not to move forward with. And it's, again,
Well,
it's confusing.
it's not that we haven't, it's the school committee
Right,
said,
right.
only proceed with priority 1 at the end of that.
But, again, but someone tonight said that the orange is priority 1.
It is all priority 1.
So, but if the school committee said only proceed with priority 1, then how isn't the orange in column 3?
So that was until our next meeting, because the design team couldn't pause on this. So the school committee said, continue designing on priority 1 until we have this meeting tonight, and then the school committee meeting on Tuesday.
But again, the school committee, so I just went, so the school committee said they wanna move forward with all priority 1s.
So
But there are priority 1s that we are not gonna move forward with tonight.
if we agree on bringing that to the school.
Yes.
But the school
And then
committee wants to.
and then the school committee, I think, is gonna take a revote.
Because what they were saying, when we brought forward the CIE, we made changes to it. And they said, we didn't vote on this, we haven't had a chance to vote on this, we only voted on what you brought forward of priority 1.
Right.
We're making recommendations to pull out some of those priority 1s to add other items in there, especially all of the renovations at Davisville Middle School and looking at adding walls at Stony Lane, Quinnesset, Fishing Cove.
So the vote we are making tonight is to also exclude some priority 1s.
Yes.
Yes, because if we're in agreement to go with column 3,
Yes.
we would be removing the air conditioned cooling at some of the schools.
Which you had
was
mentioned
on our
earlier.
priority one list, we're taking off, and what we're adding in are the renovations at DMS and the walls for Stony Lane, Quidnesset.
And to go back real quick, because way back when we first got the facilities conditions assessment, we talked about priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, priority 4, priority 5. Now we're using priority 1 again, and I just don't want there to be any confusion. The maybe instead of priority 1, we should call it top priority and secondary priority.
Yeah,
because
our priority
Our
is what
priority
we
1
made
isn't
priority.
necessarily the priority 1 off the facility condition assessment, because that's life safety, the health and life safety.
Well, each
which-
one of those priorities in RIDE, priority ones are like code, you gotta do it,
Yeah.
life safety, you have to do it.
Understand.
Priority 5, for instance, would be maintenance.
Yep.
But you can understand where I'm coming from, where, and again, then I may be the only one, where I was told that the school committee wanted to move forward on all priority ones, so I assumed that the orange was in there. And also, the cover, the heading of the orange is projects that we plan to move forward with. Just a little bit misleading, so I just thought that was, we're moving, so how, but I'm also told that everything in yellow is in 3. So if everything in yellow is in 3, and everything is orange, what we're gonna move forward with, then 4 must, and plus 5 must equal 3 that didn't. Now, basically, is that we're deciding not to move forward with some priority ones.
Correct.
And the heading projects we plan on moving forward with is misleading.
I can amend this
Oh, no,
because
that's
this
okay.
was my
That's-
fault of.
it's not a-
we,
it's
by
not a
we, I
fault.
think it was us,
It's,
not.
it's not a fault, I just couldn't figure it out, so it's not a fault at all. And then one last question is, there's a lot of money being spent on Davisville Academy. Do we know what our plans are with Davisville Academy?
So the plan with Davisville Academy, we are still moving forward, moving administration there. We're still going to most likely still have some of the current Davisville Academy programming there in the future. We're moving some of them, we're moving some classrooms over. We have one elementary classroom going to Fishing Cove this current year in September. And then we're looking at the other elementary, middle school programs going over into elementary, middle school as well. But we believe that we're still gonna need high school programming there,
Great,
along with administration going there.
excellent. So there's a cost savings there as well.
There will be a cost savings, as long as we could
Yeah.
do that, we would save on the leases. That's still our goal.
Quick question, I'm very much in favor of the new walls of new schools, but I'm just looking at last year's budget to do that was about double what's in here. The cost, so are we reducing the not quality, but are we making it more of a minimalist improvement as opposed to what we originally had in here?
So that dialogue, because I asked that same question, I said, when we talked about walls last time, it was significantly higher.
Yes.
That was based off of a more of a square foot estimate versus now they put pen to paper.
We
and
actually
said-
did a layout that shows
Okay.
the individual classrooms and the corridors now that don't exist
Okay,
officially, so it was more of a efficient type of takeoff in terms of how many lineal feet of wall you have, an STC of whatever, the height of the wall, all of that took into account.
okay, good.
On the areas at Davisville Academy where you would be moving administration to, are they currently, do they have HVAC, do they have AC or not?
They have window units.
Just, yeah,
For air
So you would
conditioning.
continue with window units in the admin area?
yes.
I think it's a significant chunk of DA, I believe, is gonna be the roof. And then I think there's a couple of, plumbing, I don't think there's,
And it's roof, security vessel,
Bathrooms.
plumbing, bathrooms.
Did anybody do so I guess mechanical equipment real quick. We talked about pulling out the air conditioning from the program, we'll just say. Does the equipment that's being replaced, when it's being reinstalled, have the ability to have air conditioning with it, or are they separate units? And my ask is, how much more would it be to include the air conditioning? And if we're, I don't wanna add more money to this, but if there's a piece of mechanical equipment that's gonna be replaced, what's the cost difference between, I guess I need to know what type of mechanical equipment.
Well, you are talking about a furnace versus a boiler. Furnace supplies both. The boiler, I believe, supplies only heating. So what they are basically doing is we are replacing all the heating boilers.
So none of the mechanical equipment being replaced could have air conditioning associated with it.
Well, there is cooling, right, dehumidification type system that's a little bit less than air conditioning per se, so I don't know.
Right, I mean, the air conditioning systems that we were proposing are VRS systems, so they're electric systems with refrigerant lines to keep the noise down and obviously keep the cost down as well. When you start replacing rooftop units with air conditioning, units get bigger.
Can the VRF system, the electric ones, do cooling and heating, like the heat pump type thing?
You can do it that way, yeah. You can do it as
You
a
can
heat.
try it really once, right next to it. I mean, maybe it's worth looking at those options and again, I don't know how much time we have now to look at those options, but we can, I think, maybe put that in the narrative and then see if we can maybe have a little bit of a estimate allowance, if we can look into that and see if that can be streamlined in the next phase.
So I guess, is there a rough estimate of $10 million more or $1 million more? Is it totally, so maybe this makes it easier, is it two totally different systems? We should concentrate on the failing equipment, replacing the failing equipment, and not making it more difficult by trying to retrofit something that might not work.
Right, exactly, because we're also gonna have to deduct all of that
It's
stuff.
okay to tell me, it's just not gonna work. Just forget about it. It's not gonna work.
It isn't gonna work easily. How's that?
I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, is because I was thinking about the built-up roofing on all these buildings that are gonna last for 50 years. Some of these buildings don't think they're gonna last that long. So, I'm wondering
Part of the-
how much that is worth it.
Part of the
to-
equation relative to built-up roof systems is they're a lot heavier than a membrane system. So RIDE is gonna require that we do an evaluation of those existing buildings anyway, to advise us what the impact would be for the built-up roof systems for the existing structure that's holding them up. And like you say, like Davisville Academy is an older school, it's predominantly a wood frame type structure, which isn't as strong as a steel frame structure like Davisville Middle School or the high school, you know.
So we could recommend a build-up roof, but once the structural analysis is done, we might just be getting a TPO.
Correct.
I guess that is a question I have. It says very clearly that this does not include a cost to improve the roof structure. And if that was required, it's gonna even make this higher, so the more expensive built-up roof system becomes more expensive, and we exceed our.
That's why you do that analysis now to figure out where you stand relative to that.
What was the lifespan of the TPO roof?
You can get 25 up to 30 years.
What's the warranty on that?
25 is the max.
So 25-year warranty on the TPO and the 30-year on the built-up.
Right.
40.
40 warranty?
On
Oh.
build-up says 40,
40 warranty.
30 is, there is some systems of 30, but the one, I think you have a 40-year, right?
Yeah, we're doing this cold.
Is it cold or
cold-
hot?
Cold
That's the
water.
coldest 30.
So I
Hot
thought
is-
you said.
But worst case scenario, if the structure couldn't accept the additional weight, we could always just put the other roof on.
Correct.
And if we
So the money's
submit the built-up in stage 2, we can modify it to a TPO later on.
And you still get qualified for the reimbursement of the built-up versus the TPO.
That's right.
And you can also add cooling later on. As long as you have heating or HVAC system in the scope for that school, if you decide to change the type of the system because you saved some money somewhere else and you want to add cooling and it makes sense, RIDE will not disapprove that. You just have to say, well, decided to go with this approach. We're gonna, instead of just heating, we'll do heating and cooling and we can afford it and it's within the range, so you can also if you saved on the roof or you decided to go with TPO roof and it makes sense, you go to RIDE and with those small kind of maneuvering of funds you can, and it makes sense, then you can move the money around. But you don't just do it yourself. We have to, the owner, project manager and the team and the town goes to RIDE and explains why you move those funds. So not because you want to, like earlier we had a comment on school being really over, say Wickford Middle is over by millions and millions of dollars and you can just pull from the other reserve, you can't do that, but if there are things that make sense, like in this case, then it is possible to do a budget transfer to accommodate some of those, sort of expenditure savings that are maybe better for the schools and for the program and for the district.
Well, that's basically Adam's question, because you are replacing equipment, and then all of a sudden, oh, let's add air conditioning to it, and maybe the equipment that you already installed doesn't accept air conditioning, or.
Well, you do it at the time of design. So, but each of those projects will have to undergo the same design review process as the larger project. So once you approve it, each project has to be submitted on again. Under 500,000, you can do one submission, 60% CDs to ride, or you have to go, if it's over 500,000, then you have to go and do schematic, design development, and 60% CDs, and you have to estimate each phase. So during that process, obviously you decide what system you want to use. You also do life cycle cost analysis for the system to identify, you have to submit 3 options to identify and then choose one option that's best. So there's a process. So it doesn't, what I'm saying is these decisions don't end here. Here right now at stage 2 level to ride, we just have to, the district just has to identify the schools, the need, the projects, and what you're going to do, whether it's security or whether it's HVAC or whether it's furniture, for instance, because that makes a difference. And then you have to put cost to it. But some things, there's room to maneuver things later on, if those decisions are not made tonight before our deadline on the 16th. Because if deadline on the 16th is not met, then we don't get anything. So.
I get that. It's a toss-up. There are a lot of questions that we are waiting for answers more than.
So if we, I was just saying, so if we went with what is in column 3, that would not include the coolant at all of the schools. It would bring us to a budget of 64.5 million, so we're over by $4 million. We would also need to know, of the 4 million, what projects are we having put on, kind of like, we will do if there's funds available.
Do we have to make that decision tonight?
Well, we don't need to make it tonight, but we will eventually need to
Yes.
make that decision. So,
I think that's something that has to be made prior to the bond vote,
right,
correct?
like when we go out, right, prior to us putting this out there to the community, we should have that identified so that the community knows that when they're making the vote, when they're going out to vote on this, that yes, our CIP is over by $4 million, and here's why, because we want to make sure that we can get approval by RIDE to do these projects if we have the funds, and projects X, Y, and Z are the projects that we will do if there's money to do so.
So I think we should follow your lead on that, because you would know best, but it just seems to be a little misleading, because if the bond came in at $5 million less, then we'd be able to cover it easily. If the bond came in at $5 million more, not only would we cut that $4, we'd have to cut another $5. So, it's too bad that if you feel we should recognize those projects that won't go forward, if the budget is exactly right, I'm okay with that. It just seems strange because it's such a flexible number.
It is, and it would have to be flexible. I guess the reason why I'm saying that is I wanna make sure that the community knows what projects we're moving ahead with, definitely, right? Like, I think we know we have to do the roofs, we wanna put security, that's what I'm saying. You know, we wanna do the ADA, the heating and ventilation.
Okay. Follow your lead on
You know,
that.
renovations at Davis, but other projects that we're putting forward and saying, when it comes down to we can't do it because the money's not there, what will those projects be? I think we just need to be prepared, right? I think those questions are gonna come up, and we need to be prepared to answer those questions, and if you say, hey, you know what, maybe it's the walls at one of the schools, we're gonna be doing that if there's funds for it.
Or maybe you look at other projects, right, like, do you take the DMS bathrooms? Like, do you try and break that out over a number of years through budget? You know, like, other ways to accomplish it that we can't predict now.
Right.
But we try and, you know, all right, project, year 3, projects we're a little over, so this year we're gonna try and tackle the lockers as part of the operating budget versus the bond. Still get reimbursement on it, still get the reimbursement on it,
It
but,
was submitted, and RIDE knows it.
you know, that's $160,000
The funding
project.
source is different of how we're.
So maybe that's the message, is that the funding source is different, but we still like to tackle
And that's
the
what we're
projects.
saying, having a
You know, the
revolving
balcony,
capital.
a $26,000 project.
Which, you know, could be funds that we have, funds that you may have surplus.
Because if everything came in exactly at budget, $4 million over 5 years is not unreasonable to find via capital. So I guess, so I just, you know, I wouldn't wanna steer the direction of the public away from the project and back towards, well, we pick this over that, that could be that's a rabbit hole we don't wanna go down.
And you gotta be careful, like I said earlier, you know, identify, well, we're gonna do these projects, and we're not gonna do that, and then 4 years comes around and find out, oh, well, project, you know, B that we said we were waiting on, we actually need to do, because that's got a higher need at that point for the project C.
Exactly.
So we just could be careful, but I think we should have an idea of what projects, you know, we know might be those projects we want to do if there's additional funding there.
So are you looking for a motion?
So we will be yes, I am looking for a motion if we're in agreement with that, or if we wanna add or make any changes to it.
Does anybody wanna add anything or remove anything? So I can make a motion to accept the third column, and I don't have my glasses on, so you have to read that number for me.
64,519,200.
I have to say it.
No. If you're saying column 3, as column 3 stated.
Don't name the column, leave the column alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Second it.
So do we have,
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Sustaining?
thank
It's
you.
a unanimous vote of who's here.
Thank you.
I think only one person left.
So the next step is this, our recommendation we brought to the school committee, who will make the final.
Right, they
decision.
may, and they have they could add or take away something on there, so.
I can amend this and had it amended
Yeah,
like with.
we'll clean this up.
Yeah, we need to make it a little
Building
cleaner, so
committee
it's
We
labeled.
would do it minus the 4, 5.
Yeah.
Maybe there's 2 columns.
Yeah, minus the heading.
Well,
yes.
there was.
Can you send that to us when you're all done? Just a quick email?
We can have this as a record because this was discussed at the meeting, we can't like throw it away, but we can amend it with a more cleaner, so.
Yeah, we can do it like final version, so.
We'll name the columns too, so
and
you
then-
know it's column 3.
Yeah, and then our next meeting, we had,
We mentioned September 11th.
yes,
We mentioned
so let's look to, when we leave here, we know.
We put it down as a tentative, but if you need to change it, we can.
We have school committee on September 12th, that's when the stage 2 will be submitted. September 11th. Does that work for everyone to have a meeting on September 11th? Do it 4:30 on September 11th?
It doesn't work for me, but, no.
You wanna,
The time or the date?
Wednesdays don't work for me.
the 10th is Tuesday's primary day, so we probably don't want to have a meeting.
But the 9th?
Really should. The 9th,
I just do it.
9th we have policy. We'd have to meet after policy. at 6 o'clock if we meet on the ninth.
When does the school committee meet?
The school committee is on the 12th.
The 10th and 11th are out.
And at that meeting, it's gonna be the approval of the stage 2 submission.
We'll have
So that's
an
important.
estimate too.
Do we need to meet prior to
We
the
really
12th?
should come in front of this committee first. If we did Monday the 9th, we have policy from 4:30 to 6, and then we can meet at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock on the 9th of
On the
Monday?
9th, does
Yeah,
that work?
That works for us, yep.
Is that good with people?
At 6 p.m.?
No, it's not good. And I think if we try to meet the week sooner, we're not gonna have the
Yeah, I think
documents
that,
in
that
a few
actually
days
is an
anyway.
ideal date.
And you'll actually get to vote on a different stage.
Right, yeah, so I'm like, don't, my URI schedules will start and it'll be complicated, so.
Hopefully it won't be.
So Ken,
Yeah.
we're saying 9 to 6 p.m.?
We are saying September 9th at 6 p.m. And that will be mainly just to review stage 2. How long do you think we will need for that?
An hour? Yeah, probably, I would, we'll also have the estimate, so maybe we'd say an hour and a half for just the Wigford part.
Oh, just for the part you're saying?
Well, I don't wanna speak for CIP.
You need an hour and a half just for the Wicked part?
Well, I'm just anticipating questions.
Really?
Or maybe an hour, let's say an
I would say
hour.
an hour.
We have
Well, they're missing
because I don't think we need
Is that
to,
town council?
I don't need to think we need to review everything that we
Yeah, that's
reviewed.
true.
Like, you know,
Okay.
tonight we went over a lot of stuff.
That's a
that
good
we-
point.
I think really it just needs to be an overview for
Yes,
us.
oh, then
Yeah.
45 minutes.
Because we have everything that's in there, I
Yeah.
think really we just need an overview
Yeah.
of here's what's in the stage 2, so we know it's
Yeah.
complete. We don't need to go through every
That's a good point.
item,
Yeah.
we just need
You're
an overview. So if we can do that within an hour, vote, that would be
Yeah.
good. So. Alright, so next meeting is 9 at 6 p.m. Okay. Alright, thank you everyone, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, motion to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
What happens if somebody forgot to do the motion to adjourn,
Yes.
the meeting never stopped?
I'm gonna have to worry about posting the next one.
Oh, it
Still the
keeps
same
going?
email, trying to keep it going, right? That's my legal